I drove field cuts through my neighborhood.
Hey everybody, how are you? I'm here with Leo and
Hola, everybody.
and we also have Oz Whistles with us, and Marcus will be joining us shortly. So I'm gonna bring Oz Whistles in. There's
Hey, Lucky.
Oz Whistles. So I figure we can hang out and talk until the Marcus number 2 is what Applejack is referring to him as.
Marcus number 2.
He's like, I got first dibs on Marcus. I am first Marcus.
Say hi.
Funny.
Go ahead.
It's funny because my name's Mitch, and there's a shop. There's a shop in my town, and both the salesmen there are both named Mitch. And it's not a very common name. It's usually associated with villains, you know.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh.
MJ from Dallas. What was his name? Mitch something or other. He was
Right.
not a very nice person.
Jared Brown's excited. She got here first.
She did too. I saw that.
Good timing.
I know it's weird. Sometimes YouTube will like erase comments. Like if you go into a stream and like leave somebody a comment, they erase them over time.
Yes, I know, on the fly, and you only notice it if you refresh the page and go looking for your comment. You can't do that every time, so it's very sneaky.
Yeah.
But if the YouTube algorithm thinks that you said something politically incorrect, it's just gone, and you don't even know it.
Just neuters you.
Yeah,
Just like
it's so dishonest and sneaky.
Yep. Kim Schwari Kate. She can't be in the chat because she's got to get back in the kitchen. She's cooking.
Nice. We're gonna be doing our drawing tonight. So everybody that
there's a lot of
The draw.
we have those paintings that Lady Alex donated.
Yeah, they're really nice too.
Yeah.
So we're gonna draw our names. I wrote down every entry and ripped up every piece of paper. They're it's all uniformed, and we're gonna do the drawing.
So all the hardcore fam will be in that basket.
Yeah. It's fully, that whole basket is just full of hardcore fam.
Yeah, I know. I'm like really excited to see.
There's a couple names in there that have kind of gone by the wayside, may have unsubscribed or so, but they're still in the running.
Why even?
Yeah, well, you got to be in it to win it. So I was discussing earlier, Lucky, that I intend to sort of do this session with Marcus from the standpoint of what I basically am, which is a neo-Luddite tribalist, which is it's neither left nor right. It's I have a completely different view of politics to most people, because I've had to invent a framework where I can actually analyze things instead of getting swept up in the negative tribalism. So,
I feel like there's a lot of that happening right now.
Oh yeah, it's out of control. Well, it's not out of control. It's very much in control by people who understand those dynamics and have learned how to manipulate them. So I was watching all the shenanigans against the big rally. When anything gets that big, it gets harnessed up by the powers, the moneyed powers normally. And it'll get derailed, or it'll give entirely the wrong message, like what happened with Black Lives Matter. You saw that get harnessed by the DNC, and
we did
totally put right off the rails, so that the original protest was completely lost and dissipated, and that was all intentionally done.
Oh yeah, this is all of this leading up to this thing is definitely intentionally done. It's some power moves are being made, and it's just I think the fact that If everybody is for something, then awesome.
Yeah.
And then I hope the momentum fucking helps. But it just looks right now like a marketing ploy. It's just to expose, it's
Look,
like, come to our event and sign our email.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not really like prepared to like really get into the event thing too much.
No.
Tonight.
Yeah, just on that topic, so rage against the war machine. So rage against. Who's coming up with these slogans? Because that doesn't really. How about motivate or activate for peace? And where I come from with that is that rage and against these are aspects that incite hatred, and hatred diminishes us.
Well, I think they're playing off the band. They're playing off of the band, Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
I know that's all very clever, but the actual message, it's sort of like defund the police. That was never going to fly. No. Because you're instantly going to divide people who are very sort of committed to law and order. So you've lost those people straight away. So if you're going to protest, you really, to be effective, you have to protest or activate for, not against. So sure. And the big thing with the defund the police was, okay, you've gotten rid of the police. What have you replaced the police with? What are you going to fund? And there was that argument running, but it quickly got drowned out by the Blue Lives Matter guys,
Well, yeah, I said that it should have been it should have been like defund the police, refund our communities, and they need to talk about where things are going, not necessarily like what they don't want. They want to take, but they don't. The message isn't clear. And defunding the police, like it leaves people go, wait, what do you mean defund the police? We need police. We need this, But at the same time, I feel like
because of the words in it.
I feel like it would have been better.
So number one, defund is negative. Okay, it sounds like it's destructive, and then you're holding up a trusted institution. Well, in many segments of society, a trusted institution. That was never going to work because it just doesn't. It's not inspiring. Black Lives Matter. That was also a flawed slogan because then it just opens up to all lives matter, So you've lost everyone from the start. And the same thing with Rage Against the War Machine. What is the war machine? And what is raging at it going to do? I mean, what good is going out saying, I'm cranky, I'm having a little hissy fit. You're going to get treated like a bunch of children from the get-go. So, it's just the kiddies going off having a little bit of a march up and down, and while they're doing it, we'll sell them something, or we'll infiltrate their speakers with the war machine. Which is it's a danger, and you'll find that some of those speakers are going to be quite delivering messages that are not designed to stop the message, but to steer it slightly off course so that it doesn't go anywhere. That's what they do. It's redirect and divide. So I'm seeing a lot of division already, and my feelers are going up, going, oh, look at all of the division going on about this already. It was like the Medicare for All thing. The divisions, it just shattered into little bits. Didn't go anywhere. So, because people started sniping at personalities. That's the main way they break these things up, is by bringing it all into identity politics and personalities, so that everybody starts, nitpicking each other and totally losing the message. Works like a charm. Anyway, what's happened to Marcus?
I'm not sure. I sent him a text, so I'm not sure what's happening.
He may have got sidetracked.
He may have gotten sidetracked.
Might have got a sidetracked.
I don't know.
You got to watch your sides because they will. You will get them tracked eventually.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, the police take their orders from whom the legislators, judiciaries, or executives, the masters of the police haven't seen a to protect and serve the public deal on a cop car for a while. Yeah, that's not what police do.
Yeah, they're not there to protect the public. They're there to protect capital, and that's what they do.
Right, yeah. And capital makes sure that they're a class apart, so that they don't communicate with the rest of the public.
If we're all seen as a number or a ranking, and you have to get so many criminals, and then everybody becomes a criminal, and you go around bopping everybody on the head saying, oh, you're one, and everybody becomes your enemy when you're looking for an enemy and you have a quota to fill. And people don't remember that. Like, the cops have quotas. They have to fill a certain number of arrests, a certain number of pulling people over and traffic violations. They have to fill these quotas. So when you put a number on the people as the quota that has to be filled, what is going to happen?
What could go wrong?
I mean, it's really simple. I mean, what if the quota was different? What if it was a different quota? What if it was a quota of I've helped this many people? I assisted this many people, as opposed to arresting that many people and policing that many people. I mean, I get that it's supposed to be there to keep people keep them doing their job, but they're overly doing their job. They're overly doing it. They're not just being like people within our community. They're overly doing it, and they have overreach and overpower and and
it goes to their heads, and then instead of being enforcers of the law, they decide that they are the law, and
and they get to be judge, jury, and executioner.
And we see that a lot. I even see that here. Some constable, I've got the power, so I can lie to people and say that this is the law when it's not. I've had them do that to me when I knew the law. Anyway, but in my country, you ask for their sergeant, who actually has to know the law. So if some constable's lying to you, say, "Oh, look, can I speak to your sergeant?" And they have to accede to that, because that's part of their the rules for cops, and the sergeant actually does have to know the law in this country.
Well, they're supposed to here, but it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't always work. I mean, this guy's armed, and you're not, and he expects you to comply. But
they don't just expect people to comply here. It's not just like, oh, they should have listened. No, they expect you to take orders and have somebody yelling at you, and they expect that person, no matter whether they have a disability or they have a hearing issue, they have any number of reasons why somebody doesn't just react to somebody yelling at them and giving them a freaking order. We're not trained that way. We haven't been trained to get yelled at like that and take an order. We're not, we're not robots, and people need to realize that we are people. If someone comes up and starts screaming at you out of the blue to do something, or you don't know how to react in that situation, and then it turns to violence.
That's the thing, though, and you dare not resist, providing whatever it is they're demanding from you, because if you stand up for your rights, then you're just inciting them to treat you even worse. Like if you try to fucking say, no, I don't need to give you my fucking ID. That's not the law. You know what I mean? They don't want to hear anything you have to say that counters their narrative.
They do care about the law, because they are the instrument of the state monopoly on violence.
Yep.
And the state monopoly on violence underpins most nation states. This is why I'm not real keen on nation states.
Oh, hang on.
They require and demand a monopoly on the use of violence, and the police are that instrument of violence. So they are, by definition, violent people. So,
Yeah.
you don't go up, and they're tribal. It's sort of like when you get that class apart who don't communicate much with the rest of society, they will tribalize very quickly. And tribes are mutually defensive, and anyone who goes against their tribe, then if you're against one of them, you're against all of them, and you don't stand a chance. And that's where they become toxic, and where they can escape scrutiny and accountability, because nobody wants to go against that tribe. They're too damn powerful. And what's worse is that they're unionized. So in America, for instance, you don't go against the police union. It doesn't matter who you are. So you're just like going against the CIA or the FBI.
So I got to update. That was Marcus that called. So he was just letting me know that he's running late and he'll be right with us. So.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah. Yeah, so there's two angles on the police there. Just the way I look at it is one was from the angle of the nation state. If you have a nation state, you will have police in one form or another as the instrument of the violence of the state. And it's there in your constitution somewhere. And from the angle of tribes, and because tribalism causes class, from my research anyway, it appears that when a tribe gets too big, it splits. Now, if it can't geographically split horizontally to new territory, it'll vertically split into an overclass and an underclass. And that process goes on and on and on and on. And then nation states start defining classes and saying, oh, here's the class of coppers. Okay, so they become homogenous and they will re-tribalize very quickly. So you'll find the districts, cops will form up into gangs. And they'll hang around together and they'll go out together, and they don't socialize with non-cops very much. And they become a very functional tribe, very toxic. But, that's the toxicity of class, because they were defined as a class. So they're supposed to be officers. You know what an officer is? An officer is defined by the office.
They were supposed to be to collect slaves. That's really what the police were in the United States.
Well, that's what they started out as, vigilante groups, or militias. But you know what an officer is? So, like a judge is an officer. That's why in a court of law you address the judge as Your Honour, because you're not addressing the person, you're addressing the honour of the office.
Yeah.
So when a cop crawls into his uniform, he's putting on an office. He's representing an office which is defined by law. And as a human being, he has to comply to the office. He's an officer.
Yeah, they don't, though. They don't hear, at least. Not in the U.S.
This is not often mentioned facts about how our Western civilization is constructed with these definitions. Very important. And it's enforced. If you sign a contract to execute the duties of an office, then you are at the service of that office. So in fact, a policeman is actually at the service of his uniform. He's not at his own service. So if you catch him out being at the service of himself, in contradiction to his office, then he can be indicted.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way here, though. It doesn't work that way here. It doesn't work that way.
Because the judiciary has been totally corrupted by, 2 or 3 lane justice system, and or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10. And it's complying to your class echelons. And, with your 0.1% completely unaccountable and above everything. That not even the CIA will go after them.
Right.
Marcus, give me a thumbs up if you are good. Are you good? Good. He's switching it.
Switching.
There he goes. I think you got it. Good. All right, here we go. And here's Marcus.
Hey! Nice to finally match the face with the name. I've been going back and forth chit chatting with Oz probably. What is it? Easily been a year, 2 years now that I've seen him back and forth through different streams, and I'm in my chat also. So good to finally match the face.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm not exactly sure what we're going to be talking about today, but I said to Lucky earlier that I'll keep myself to addressing things from the angle of a neo-Luddite tribalist. I try not stray too far so that the scope can be better managed, if I could say that.
Sure. So, what? I mean, I don't mind. Let's whatever conversation. I think we were. I don't remember. Don't quote me wrongly. But I think we were talking about communism and if it was actually able to be put into practice.
Yeah. Well, using my tribalist hat, is that communism is in search of tribalism. Because
I agree.
Because people are more comfortable with small extended family groups where everyone grew up with everyone else, and you know everybody really, really well. And there's upsides and downsides. It means that you'll all be at each other's. You'll be covering each other's backs all the time, so you get a sense of security. But a tribe can go on the bloody warpath too and cause a lot of damage.
That's true.
So what do you do when it fractures and it goes sideways like that? What's the best, what's the solution?
You've got to do diplomacy. That's where diplomacy has to start. Yeah. But see, communism was trying to make the communes like cookie cut. But I'm not sure just how much autonomy that they allow their communes or their Soviets to how much autonomy they have or latitude in self-definition. It's the same with the churches. A church congregation is an artificial tribe.
True.
And they've tried to construct it so that it doesn't go toxic, but sometimes it succeeds. Sometimes
I think if I could step in and help you there, I think what you would need in order for that tribe to function properly is an agreed set upon guidelines on what's in bounds and what's out of bounds, and then you're able to go from there. So if it's like, for instance, communism a lot of times is dealing with communal property, and what's yours is mine, what's mine is yours, and knowing where that boundary separates and where it goes to. So say, for instance, you might have a situation where all the means that is made and gathered by that tribe is all communal up until a certain amount, where that amount might be a rainy day fund for if things go awry or if another tribe is going against your tribe and you're separated from your tribe, you have a means of survival. And so as long as you have these guidelines onto where you separate certain things, and if they're, like you said, what happens if there starts to become a big division within the tribe and they want to make, let's say, for instance, that they want to build a road, but this other part of the tribe doesn't want to build a road. Well, how do you rectify this situation? We're all equals, so nobody has more of a leverage.
That's where you imagine, and this is how a lot of tribes function, is that they have a meeting with everybody to discuss the issue, and then get agreement on whether to build the road or not. And like if the tribe is functional, they shouldn't have too much difficulty reaching that decision. But you've got to go through the process of making the decision in an inclusive way.
Yeah.
And, also in a way that respects the different stages of life. Like a child is not the same as an adult, is not the same as an old person. You have different different objectives and the different experience, of course. But this is where, the hardest thing for me with tribes is the notion of Dunbar's number, which is how big, how many people you can actually have in a familial tribe. And there's been a lot of people study that, anthropologists and stuff, and it gets called Dunbar's number. And Dunbar was an anthropologist, and he come up with about 150 is about as many as you can actually cram into a functional tribe. And after that, it will split. And I've looked into why that split happens, and it's quite natural. But a functional tribe should know to expect that. To say, oh, look, the tribe just made it to 151. We should start the rituals of division, of amicable division. How are we going to do this before it starts to become a schism and infighting and all of the nastiness that happens in politics?
Parameters.
And also, if two small tribes merge, how do you? What is the ritual or the process by which you do that? Because you'll have a familiarity problem, so you have to work on your familiarity with the new people. Right. And how do you treat total strangers who are not going to join your tribe, but they're coming and going? Hospitality, politeness, I suppose.
With so many people though in the world, and you know what I mean, like just like you think about that. Think about groups of 150, no more than 150. How many groups and tribes would that be?
Imagine.
That's a lot.
A lot. It's a big world. It's a very big world.
Well, that's the reason why I make the claim a lot of times that, and a lot of people think of communism as a governmental structure. And I disagree with that understanding. I go with more like Oz's understanding, where it is more of a tribe. It's more of a mindset. When you try to extrapolate that out to a government, like he said, 150, which I've heard maybe some of the Taino tribes, which had a form of, what can be looked at as a form of communism, where it was a lot more equality, shared means, things like that, where some of the tribes might have been a slightly larger than 150, but honestly, he's right. About 150, you more times than not start running into problems, and that's why that's where I start saying, well, it gets difficult when you start trying to extrapolate that out to a country of over 330 million, possibly up to 350 million at this point, and then it's not a homogenous nation of people either, where it's a little bit easier, where you have a bunch of people who come from a homogenous nation where I'm not necessarily saying homogenous as in colors or tones or anything. I'm saying if you guys all somewhat believe the same things.
Yeah, we're very divided.
Basic, so
in
that,
the US.
There are going to be the common issues for all tribes. But you can't have, no two tribes can be identical. The way I see it is we evolved as a nomadic tribe sort of situation where we had to respond to the local environment and conditions, and a lot of those things are very specific to that environment, and you can't successfully command against the requirements of that environment from some kind of higher authority or nation or something to say, no, everybody's, and they used to do this in Australia, for God's sake, that you had to have basically neck to ankle cover to go and swim in the ocean, in Australia, which is so bloody hot, and you try and swim fully clothed, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's difficult.
It took 100 years before they allowed people to go bare-chested or, dress appropriately.
I wanted to touch on what Jimmy said out there. Shout out to Manitalk. But Jimmy said ancient Hawaiians had family village systems. And I honestly think, not honestly, just honestly think historically, most tribes did come from families. That's the origins of most of these nations. It started off with a patriarch family, and then they were distant relatives to distant relatives to distant relatives. So eventually it got big enough that it became a town, and then it became a city, and then it became a nation. And that's some of the divisions which you started having. So sometimes it can be easier, say I'm just going to throw a random god out there. Say this tribe believes in the god Anasi, and there are certain guidelines put down by Anasi that they all follow. Then it's a little bit easier because you guys are all following at least some kind of guideline. It's the same thing in the military. That's a form of a tribe also. In the military, you follow the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And it doesn't matter if you're the lowest airman, seaman, private, whatever, all the way up to a general. There are certain rules and guidelines that we all have to adhere to, no matter rank structure. So if you have some kind of a form of a Uniform Code of Military Justice, some kind of creed, you have to have some kind of thing which is above everybody, that keeps everybody is following to this one thing. And if we're all able to agree on this constitution or framework or whatever you would want to call it, then it's a little easier to get past that 150 to larger units. And a lot of times when you had tribes where it started off with families, it's a little bit easier because naturally some things families are just not going to do to each other, being honest. So it makes it a little easier to deal.
Well, there's two limitations there. Well, number one, patriarchy isn't the only stable social form, It's just
I'm just saying, I was saying patriarchy as in a foundational start.
Yeah, that's where you've got a hierarchical system. That's patriarchy. It's you've got the chief, and you've got the chief's close guys, and then you've got everybody else and all the rest.
I think the problem that comes in is the corruption. That's what I would think. That any system, you can have a perfect system lined out, but it's as long as everyone actually follows it, and then there's no corruption in that system, then it's probably going to go okay.
Patriarchy is prone to corruption. Now it depends. If you've got a patriarchal tribe, for instance, it's got a chief. Now you might get two kinds of chief. You might get one chief who does everything at the service of the tribe, and is a good leader because he's a good servant, and is serving the tribe, and all decisions are for the good of the tribe. And then you can get the other one who says, "Hey, I'm head honcho. It's my way or the highway." Yeah. And this goes through every kind of politics that you can name. Is those two different mindsets can turn something that could be good and at service to people to something that becomes toxic to people and exploitive and corrupt. And to me, that's the heart of corruption, is whether you're at the service of your people or if you see your people as your servants. And that's the heart of corruption in my book. But also corruption can sneak in where you got so many people crammed into the organization, into the group, that you don't know everybody. And the people can hide in the shadows because, you're accepting people that you don't quite know and don't quite know how to trust. And that's a doorway for corruption as well. In my opinion.
Also, you could have corruption introduced, or some of these problems, which a lot of people, when they think about these things theologically, they don't think about if there's any kind of lack of resources. Let's say, for instance, you've been able to grow your crops perfectly fine year after year after year, and then all of a sudden this massive drought comes. Then you start having hoarding, then you start having, greed creep into the picture. People start rationing the corruption, exactly. And sometimes the corruption comes off of circumstance.
Yeah, and you'll find in patriarchies that the corruption starts at the top because they're the ones who have the power to do the hoarding. Because if you know everyone, you go, Jim Bob over here, Chief Jim Bob, he's got all of the corn from last year. He's not sharing it, the bastard. You know? But in a large tribe, you might not even know that. You know?
Yeah.
And if Jim Bob's doing that, then the tribe's going to come around and say, "Hey, Jim Bob."
Well, how do you?
What about the rest of us?
So say you're in this, you have this tribe, you have this structure, and it's working, right? And you have all this. What about when you get somebody that does something that is completely off the rails, unacceptable, out of the tribe is just like, no, you're awful. You violated somebody physically. You did something so extreme that they're like,
well, in a functional tribe, the only way for that to happen is that they've got a brain injury or something, because a functional tribe won't be generating that pathology.
But I mean, there's sick people everywhere, though. There's people that are going to do stuff that you don't.
Yeah, in our civilization, it's a pathology factory. It's a trauma factory.
Okay, so what do we do, though, is my question. What do we do if we're in that situation where there is somebody that does have some reason or whatever, they do something that they shouldn't, and it's to the severe point of people are like, I don't want this person in our tribe anymore. How does that work?
Well, just to sort of take it from a couple of angles, that the most functional tribes have a lot of compassion, and they'll be going, gee, there's something wrong with Bluey over here. He's going off the rails. What's wrong, Bluey? So how can we? Why are you doing this? And to have the compassion instead of going, oh, Bluey, we hate you because you did a bad thing. No, they'll be sort of going, one of us has got a problem, and one of us has a problem. We all have a problem. How can we fix this? And come together as a tribe and say, well, we could try this, and you try this, and it doesn't work. But the ultimate and the only sanction that a functioning tribe should practice is exile. They say, okay, Bluey, you're out. Don't come near us again, or we'll spear you.
Yeah, but what happens? What happens if you just exile? Say whatever they did was so egregious that it leaves a wound on the people who are left behind. If some kind of and then you have a situation where that person can come out, and now not only since you exiled them, it might feel like they're gone, but now they are a danger and a threat to the tribal security as a whole. You have to have some kind of guidelines. Now I know everybody's not going to agree with this, but you have to have some kind of guidelines for each different situation that, because regardless of if it is something where maybe this person did just go off their rocker and they went down the wrong path, it is what it is at this point. There's no guarantee that you're going to be able to fix whatever is wrong with this person. Yeah, I mean, if say for instance this person is a child molester, no study has shown that is a behavior that can just be fixed. There are rare cases where it's believed that some of these people might have discontinued the behavior, but it did not discontinue upstairs. The desire did not go away from them. They're just no longer doing it, which that's good that they're not doing it anymore. But that's proof also that you can't just sometimes that person is still a threat or a danger to the tribe, and that has to be weighed in for the security of the tribe itself. Because what happens?
Obviously you got to do something.
What happens if that person, you exile them, and then they just go to another rival tribe, and then they decide to exploit all the weaknesses of your tribe so that your tribe can be destroyed?
So a tribe would have to be very careful with the processes of accepting someone into your tribe. To say this might be an exile, there'll be a reason for that. Will we accept this person?
Well, one of the Aztec tribes, that's how they were destroyed, literally. One of their high up chieftains, they literally betrayed the tribe and opened them up to be massacred, all for greed. I mean, there's a name in Latin culture. I'm blanking on it right now, but they call people that to this day if they look at them as a traitor.
Mm. Yeah, well, Aztec society was deeply patriarchal and class-ridden, and
but I'll say being necessarily patriarchy or matriarchy, that's not necessarily even the problem. Just like I'll say, a lot of people will say, well, it's the ism, it's this, it's that, it's how the individual at the top of that society decides to run it. There were plenty of Native American tribes, for instance, that ran perfectly fine. But there were also tribes which that tribe might have worked fine itself together, but that tribe was a plague on every other tribe.
Yeah, it happened in the South Pacific as well. Mm-hmm. Not long ago, about 80, 90 years, one of the head honchos just went brutal and was sailing around cannibalizing whoever they found. They'd eat them. Mm-hmm. And yeah, completely toxic. Yeah, tribes can go wrong. You bet they can.
Well, what I'm saying is tribes can go wrong, just like any system can go wrong. You had righteous kings and monarchies, and you also had disgusting ones. You had great Caesars during the Roman Empire, and you had horrendously evil ones. You had good systems of socialism, and you had bad systems of socialism. So what I'm saying is it's not necessarily even the system. A lot of times it's the morals that are indicative of how this society operates versus how they decide to what ways they decide to operate.
And this is where religion tried to step in to moderate all that, to make sure that all the tribes had a functional set of morals.
But when you say religion, let's be specific. Which type of religion are we talking about? Are we talking about different pagan forms of religion? Are we talking about Abrahamic religions? Are we talking about Buddhism, Taoism? Are we talking about more animalistic societies, or ones which just believed in their religion as far as the forms of nature? Yeah. It does make a difference because all of them didn't operate the same way.
Yeah, I know that, but you'll find that they all have their common rule set.
No, not necessarily, because you have plenty of tribes which are off the grid, who they have their various different beliefs, and they don't harm anybody or do anything else. It's normally the ones that have been honestly the most toxic have been the ones that have fell up under, I would say, some of the Abrahamic faiths, or some of the pagan religions which went throughout the Greek and Roman empires. Those would have been the most egregious towards other cultures.
Yeah, look, see what Salty said here
too? If it's tribe-sized, I wouldn't call it religion. I'd call it spirituality. But religion is centralized because it provides a central definition. So the Abrahamic religions, the Hindi religion, Buddhism, because they're based on.
I would disagree with what Salty says. What if corruption is a social trigger of evolution? Then that would indicate that no matter what, we're eventually just going to become corrupt. And I disagree with that. I believe that the corruption comes from that being within a person's spirit and nature. That if you make a wrong decision on who you allow to become your leader, then they can lead you astray. And now you're dealing with a corrupt leader, which, a fish rots from the head. If the head is rotten, then the whole society becomes rotten eventually. But if you're able to have a leader which is not corrupt, and they're on top of things, they're able to purge out the signs of corruption as it arises.
Yeah, but who enforces that? And how do, like, say, you get a set of rituals or customs to determine if somebody's suitable for leadership.
Popeye said, whoever ends up on the top is corrupted eventually. I think it depends on the person, and it depends on the tribe and how healthy a tribe is.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you have a really healthy tribe, if they start seeing stuff like, you know, like say like Steve is our tribe leader, and then like we're like, dude, like what's going on? If people are being honest and like, you know, the rest of the tribe is like, no, Steve is doing something that's not right, something's not right. And if it's a healthy tribe, then the tribe will be honest and be like, yeah, we need a change of leadership, and that we see this as a whole tribe. And you know what I mean? Like that's what you have to do. You have to be able to hang on. You have to be able to have that honest conversation, though.
Yes.
Like you have to be able to have that foundation of honesty and integrity and morals, and you have to build it off of that, and not, you know, and nobody gets to, you know, be at the top. You know what I mean? Just solely and be like excluded from any kind of criticism or any kind of anything. You know what I mean? Like they have to be at the same. Even if you are a leader, you know, you have to be at the same level. You can't be like better than somebody else. You know what I mean? Just because you're in that position. Because it should be that you're looking out for the entire group of everybody, not just for yourself. That's the thing.
That also garners
I think the yardstick of that, in my opinion, is compassion. If somebody doesn't display compassion, then they're going to be toxic no matter what. And like we look at the people that we elect as leaders, and none of them display any kind of compassion or empathy. You know,
I wouldn't say they were elected. I think they were selected. But yeah,
absolutely, they are selected because we're given a barrel of rotten apples to choose from.
Pick the most the rotten one, the least rotten.
Well, and I mean, you could say that it's kind of a mixture. Like I tell people all the time, you know. The president, for instance, most presidents know literally nothing about foreign policy or the military. Most of our politicians, if you can look this up, majority of them right now are lawyers. Yeah. They study in how to argue versus understanding certain systems. And when you don't understand these certain systems, how they operate, you're able to be manipulated by other people. And so what happens when something happens as a part of the world? There's a general or an admiral who walks in and says, hey, Mr. President, here's 4 ways to respond.
Yeah, that's right.
So they give them the direction which they want them to go in already. So
yeah, they're being manipulated.
Exactly. Even though that president thinks they're making, they think they're making a choice. No, you're making the choice out of what I want you to do.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's like when you think of like a parent-child dynamic, right? It's like, give your child as many options as they can that are age appropriate, right? And you're going to be like, okay, well, these are your choices for dinner. You get a choice between, you know, this meal, and this meal. But like ice cream's not an option. You know, like,
exactly.
You don't get to have that as an option. You get to pick one of these 3 meals.
You can't have nice things. It's not on the table. You can have
you know what I mean? No, like
this nasty thing. Just choose. Anyway, but I find that's a function of having too deep a hierarchy, because if you have like a president of the United States, they're surrounded by advisors, as you say, a whole class. What do they call it? The Beltway, and you've got to keep them on side. Otherwise, they will undo you, and you won't have the power.
But if you're too loose though, and it's too wide open, then once one person who believes they're powerful enough, how would you stop them from basically making themselves into a dictator if there's no checks and balances?
Yeah.
Well, the first rule of power is to keep power. And the second rule of power is to keep power. And then everything else.
But that's going off. That's going off of a lot of our leaders who have went more into Machiavellian way of leadership, and we don't have to go in that means. It's just most of our leaders in the Western powers, that's who they hold up, and so that's what they all go to, because that's what they've been taught. This is how you operate. There have been many of leaders in many other cultures who have decided, I'll raise up, I'm living in a certain way, and then okay, it's time for me to pass it on. And there's plenty of examples where they don't automatically go into corruption. Like some people automatically think, oh, and what you're going off of is you're basing that off of a system which most of us are living in or grew up in that is corrupted, and all you saw is corruption. So it's hard to fathom that there are systems that there might not be corruption. That might actually operate, like Oz was saying, with compassion, with wisdom, with with a sense of duty and justice. It's possible, but when you like, I'll say it all the time. Going back a little biblical, when the wicked are in power, the world mourns. When the righteous are in power, the world rejoices. So if you have somebody who's righteous, who tries to do things in a proper manner, everybody will benefit from that. And people will also learn to look to that person as a leader and want to emulate that behavior.
Well, yes. But I think that our current institutions are so corrupt now that those kind of compassionate leaders are not allowed in. It's all locked off to them.
Well, even if they were allowed in, they wouldn't let them do anything.
Oh, I mean, because he just went off script a little bit and they nailed him.
He just went off just a tad. What it was Trump was one of those situations where it was like, okay, we said jump. He jumped, but he was like, do I have to jump? They're like, no, we want the guy in there who's not even going to ask. We want the guy who's going to be jumping before we even say to jump. And that's what it is.
That was the degree of his narcissism. He said, I'll jump the way I jump, guys.
Exactly.
And
he's like, no, you're not going to tell me to jump. I'm going to tell you how to jump and where I want you to jump.
I want you guys to know he is the most existential threat that has ever been threatened against the American Republic.
I've only got one answer to that. Bill Clinton.
Well, and the thing about it is all of these people are all operating from the same people. I mean, what I would say is if you look back to some of these former governments, and I'm not talking about government, I'm talking about going deeper, back to some of these different kingdoms in general. You had very, very corrupt royalty who were doing things. Well, you want to know what happened to a lot of that royalty? Once the heat got on them, they probably some of them got taken out, and then what happened to their children? But all of them didn't go away. What happened is some of the people who were in the courts who were making those decisions learned from that, and they say, you know what I'm going to do is we're going to still operate things, but we're going to put somebody else in the front to take the heat for it. And that's more or less what you had. Like I always talk about Game of Thrones. They always talk about the ruler of the realm in the 7 kingdoms, but the person who is really controlling all the kingdoms is the Iron Bank. And when you find out who's the person who's sitting behind the banks, who's putting these advisors in place, who's telling you, oh yeah, you're going to stock your cabinet with Citibank and Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch. The people who were putting the people in place behind them, because the aides run Congress. Those aides work directly for the people who are pushing the agenda. Most of our politicians and elected officials are just figureheads, so that they can take the heat for anything that happens.
They have a puppeteer. Even if they don't think it or they don't admit to it, they have a puppeteer. They have somebody pulling their strings, and it's just like the majority of the people. They think that they come up with ideas and that they, you know what I mean? Like, but honestly, a lot of it is pushed and influenced in subliminal ways to people.
Can I tell you a little story?
Vegan makes a good point here. I just want to bring this up real quick. She said that doesn't have to be true. If everything is open and transparent, then issues that arise can be stopped before they become serious problems.
Correct.
If you can get the transparency and the openness. I mean, gee, man, even when you get a FOIA request fulfilled, they just look at all of the redacted stuff. Like there's no transparency in that black ink.
Yep.
Now, do you have those in Australia too? Do you have the same? Your system of government is different there. So
Yeah,
like, I don't
very
always
similar
know.
to England or Canada. But
parliamentary system.
That sort of government secrecy is, from the British. Yeah, none of your business. That's state power for you. You're very rigid in the English-based legal systems. Western.
Well,
Yeah,
Steve was
I would.
telling me about that though, like how like the it's really Steve. What were you saying? Explain it. You know what I'm talking about.
What?
Can I tell you a little story about banks? Banks
Oh,
are all
yeah.
about money.
Yeah.
And very, very people have the first idea about what money is and how it works. It's back in, I think 2010 or Greece was having this huge problem with because they were under the euro, and the European Union was not going to fund them to get out of their recession. And so people started doing barter. And I was talking to some Greek friends and saying, well, why don't you start a currency? Which Greece should have gone back to the drachma at that time, but they didn't. You can ask Varoufakis about that. And so I had some friends that I said, well, how about you start off a neighborhood currency, get a good selection of your neighbors and stuff and start your own money. And anything that gets traded in that neighborhood, you just use your own currency. You don't use the euro. And they said, yeah, well, that'd be great. How do you do it? So I spent a couple of weeks designing a currency for them. How you could run it off a computer and have just basic coins, or even print it. Whoever's doing the central account can print out banknotes, and they're guaranteed to correspond to your accounts, because it's a neighborhood, right? It's not a whole nation. You can do it on a laptop with a printer. And then I started researching into, well, what happens? What are the rules of issuing the currency? How do you get into the currency, and how do you get out? And how do you govern your interactions with people outside of the neighborhood using the euro? So I come up with, well, what you'll do is you exchange all of your euros for your neighborhood currency, and then the central bank has got all the euros. So when you want to get something from outside the neighborhood, you've got to get together as a community and decide that you're going to buy this or that, or let this or that into the neighborhood, and the central bank will pay it out. And I'm going, geez, that's pretty much how every currency works. And when you look at the rules of who comes into the economy, what if someone gets born? What if someone dies? What happens to their money? And then you've got this sort of central authority having the power of life and death over everybody who uses the currency. And I realized that a currency defines a nation more firmly than their borders, because whoever's using that currency are under the total power of life and death from the issuer of the currency. And I stopped working with my Greek friends, because as soon as I realized that, I said, this is fucking evil as shit. No one should have that power. But they do. And even Rothschild.
But see, here's the issue that you run into. You're able to come to that conclusion, but you got to remember, everybody's different. You're going to run into people who would be amongst your tribe who are not going to think that way. And so therefore, what will happen is eventually it gets to a point where people who have your viewpoint would get outnumbered and pushed out.
Mm. Well, one would hope, but it's just that.
But see, you don't have to go off hope. You can look at what's literally happened throughout history, and history is an indicator of our current reality and future reality.
Well, I mean, we've in terms of the flow of value around a community. Dave Graeber and Michael Hudson wrote about this. The most stable economies are gift economies. They don't use money. If you're using tokens of exchange, that's what you do when you don't trust the other person in the transaction. So you need the third party to enforce the contract. So you paid for the goods, give him the goods. or else police, you know. So that's barter doesn't last long because it's clumsy. You do get barter between tribes. I think Graeber wrote about, he's studied some Aboriginal tribes. Aboriginals, by the way, are very, very close to communism because they don't have any sense of property at all.
Yeah, but like I always try to tell people, you know, you go back to the earliest form of communism, which goes back to Epicurus. That worked because it was on a small scale, and all the people who were within Epicurus' circle all knew each other. So
Yeah.
you're going into an agreement already having a shared viewpoint on the world, just like as if you had some form of a religion or constitution or whatever. All of these people are coming in with a set belief, and that's how it's able to work. But when you extrapolate these things out onto larger scales, therein lies the problem. And that's where the problem always lies. You can build a lot of models when they're small and the model works small, but it's when you increase that model out is when you start to find the difficulties in that translation.
That's exactly right, and it corresponds to the maximum size of a functional tribe. Dunbar's number again.
Well, that's the reason why what I tell people with communism. When you extrapolate communism, it's all right as an idea, and it would be great if it could work perfectly. But when you extrapolate that out into a full entire nation, just numbers, probability of people that are going to be corrupt, people that are going to be greedy, people that are going to do wicked, evil stuff. Like there's some people who say, well, there should be a society where we just try to have therapy for people no matter what their ailment. Well, what happens if this person is a complete actual psychopath? Yeah. They're going to play for a while and play along just so they can come back out and murder a whole bunch of more people. You have to deal with like the reality of things versus how we necessarily want things to say. I want to respond to this one comment back from Germality. It says, you don't get to the top without corruption in the first place. Well, that's in this system, which is already formatted. If you are starting out a system from scratch, it doesn't have to be corrupt from the beginning. It's just the system that we're in, that you talk about the neo-colonial experiment, or you talk about just the experiment since the Roman Empire and what I like to call the revised Roman Empire of most of the Western powers and NATO. They have control over the whole entire earth. I mean, there's over 65 countries which celebrate independence from Great Britain alone, and Great Britain is a small island. And so it's just letting you know that you look at the places which Great Britain colonized, you look at the places which France colonized, which a good, like probably a third of Africa, France alone colonized it. You think about the Central America and South America, which are massive areas. Spain and Portugal chopped up most of that. So we've only got to a couple, like, I mean, I haven't even got past counting on my hand a handful of nations that are very tiny, that have basically set the framework for the world that we're all living in now. And so since we're already in the middle of a game, it's hard to get outside.
Like change all the rules, you know. It's like you're in the middle of playing Monopoly and we're gonna switch this to a totally different game. Yeah. And everyone's supposed to just shift right over and get the new rules down. And it's like that, I think, is one of the best examples of like how like it can be really confusing. Imagine if you're playing Monopoly and then all of a sudden, you know, because Monopoly is built upon the system in which we're using, right?
Yeah, and we're talking about up there, everybody has already got all the properties on the board.
Suddenly we're like, we're playing life, you know, we're playing a game of life or something, you know?
Well, if this is the game of life, Vicky Adams just made cookies mandatory. So cookies are now mandatory.
Look, part of my objective as a bloody old man is to share some of the fundamental insights that I've found that are true. There's no magic bullets, and it's the Lady Macbeth thing, you know, where so far stepped in blood, it's just as hard to go back as to go forward. I think there was the message, you know, they're already corrupted, they might as well just go all the way, you know. And that's the mindset. But just one thing I wanted to circle back on was that most people believe that all US dollars are created by the central bank, by the Fed and the Treasury with bond swaps and stuff. That's only about 5% of the money you use. All the rest of the money that's in circulation in the USA and goes overseas to pay people off and stuff like this, and for international exchange, printed by banks by way of making loans, because people don't understand that when you make a loan, you create money. That's why they had the fractional reserve rule, that the banks could print $9 out of $10. They had to keep 10% of actual money, and they could create the other 90%. And people don't understand that. So who has the power? You're talking about the banks controlling the judiciary. Well, yeah, that's where the power comes from.
I completely agree. Salty digital dive. Didn't you just argue that social strife wasn't a part of evolution? I didn't say social strife was not a part of evolution. Of course, you're always going to have strife. You're always going to have issues, no matter even in a society that's running well. I'm saying corruption and strife are not necessarily the same thing. You can have, for instance, you could have rough days and you could have a horrible life. Those two things are not mutually the same thing.
Yeah. So, like, for instance, corruption will cause strife, but the trick is not to expect a life without strife, but to learn how to handle strife.
Yeah, when it comes. Yeah, when it comes.
So that it doesn't continue.
Have the solutions in place.
Yeah, literally getting sick is a form of dealing with strife. And so none of us are going to just have this perfect life where nothing ever happens, where there's never any issues. We're all human beings. We're going to have moments where we're happy, sad, depressed, jealousy. All of these things are going to happen. But corruption is something very, very different than just having strife.
Yeah, corruption is, in my definition, is when you turn your back on your community for your own benefit. And that's the heart, for me, that is the heart of all corruption. And you can only do that if you subjugate your own compassion and empathy. So if you have empathy with the people in your community, you won't divert everything to yourself. Or if you do, and the community says, "Oh, yeah, that's not fair," and you go, "Oh, yeah, sorry," and you'll self-adjust into a functional tribe, because they'll let you know if you overstep your natural sense of justice, and everybody can see justice.
Yeah, I don't believe in a such thing as perfection or in necessarily evolution. I believe we just live. I believe that you create up your structures and everybody's going through life the best that they can. I don't think that there's ever going to be a point of perfection in any form.
No, I think we'll always be striving for better, but I don't think that we'll ever be perfect, because we are inevitably flawed as humans.
But like in technology, they found rocks that literally create electricity. Have been here. And we talked about this last time, Lucky, about how that there's technologies that we believe are lost. So some people will think that we're evolving to a new place. No, we could just be rediscovering a lot of old things that have always been.
I think that we need to actually bring things back. I think that we need to, as humans, catch up with the technology, and I don't think that we have. I don't think that we have really, found the balance. I think that there is so much of it that it's kind of taken over our lives, and it's pulled us from the connections to the earth, and we're not using it in balance. And I think not everybody, you know what I mean? Obviously, when I'm saying this, I'm not talking about every single person, but I think that we are most people are out of balance. Are they going out? Are they touching the grass? Are they being in nature? Are they experiencing other things? Or are they sucked into a digital world where things all revolve around electronics? Because I know it's really easy, you know what I mean? It's really easy to be like, wow, I just got sucked into social media all day. How did that happen? It's it's really easy when you're not paying attention and you're not making yourself like stop.
That's the definition of hypnosis, Lucky. That's the definition of hypnosis. When we sit there and we look up like, crap, I've been sitting here for 4 hours. Well, you were hypnotized. We all think that it's this, somebody's winding the clock back and forth, and that's not necessarily. There's all kinds of forms of being hypnotized.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's an addiction.
I'm glad you bring that up. I'm glad you bring that up so that I can explain the neo-Luddite side of my ism. Mm-hmm. Is that people think the Luddites were just hated technology and smashed things up. They smashed up spinning and weaving machines because they saw these things come into their community and displace the skills that were already in the community, the weavers and spinners. And so we're going to lose those skills. We don't want to lose those skills because then we become dependent on these machines, and we don't want to have the dependency. And so when you're talking about these things, see, I do have one. I was given it, but I've never turned it on. Well, I did turn it on, but I just let it run out of battery, and I never used the thing.
I'll say, Oz, if I can add, I would say that not only that it creates a dependence on this object, that it also alleviates something spiritual that is going on also, because I believe relationships were built during that time. Lessons were being passed while doing these things. And it's the same thing which happens with, granted, we're all on electronic device right now, but there's something that's being lost in this dialogue when it's happening online and it's not being able to be face to face in a more natural setting, like I feel things should. Like I enjoy talking to people face to face more than anything.
Oh yeah.
But I get it. But this is just kind of the world we live in right now, and it's not set up so that we have more time to spend with each other and have more of these dialogues.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of upside there, but to me, anything like you talk about, we lose technologies. Now, I'll bet anything that those technologies we lost were technologies that couldn't be centralized.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
So what comes to mind? One thing that the Catholic Church suppressed, according to Bill Mollison. But anyway,
I'll say one thing they suppressed.
was the trompe, which is what you do is you take a stream and you lead it out, and then you dump it down into a well, down a pipe, and at the top of the pipe you've got an aerator, so the water goes in, takes a lot of bubbles, and it carries the bubbles down, and then it goes into a little chamber with a baffle that so that the bubbles precipitate to the top of the chamber, and then you let the water out without the air in it. Now you can get like 10 atmospheres built up in there, and then you've got essentially, once you set it up, you've got free pneumatic power. You can run anything off of it. Mm-hmm. But see, the thing is, it doesn't go to large scale. It works best at like a factory level or community level, where you only need one of these things, and then you've got pneumatic power for whatever, you can drive anything off the damn thing. And that got suppressed. It was invented in Spain 300 or 400 years ago. They used to use the compressed air to drive their blast furnaces to make steel. And and it's very, very simple. At a community level, you could build such a thing, but it's not baseload power that, like your giant power stations that you've got to pay money for, and it keeps you dependent, unless you go and buy a petrol generator, which a lot of people are these days, and then you're dependent on the oil companies, and, and we know what they're like.
I didn't know if you're finished. I didn't want to interrupt, but it just reminded me of something. I was going to ask, do you know how Brazil, how the Portuguese colonized Brazil? Because at that time, Spain owned it. And Spain kept having all these uprisings, and they thought there's no way you can keep Brazil under control. Do you know how the Portuguese took it over? By getting them dependent on things. They gave them things that they'd never had before and got them used to them and addicted to these things. And they knew the only way they can get these things is to get them from the Portuguese. And eventually that led to them giving away land and other resources. And then the Portuguese were able to sit above them. And they would never completely get rid of the Portuguese because they needed things from them.
Yeah.
It would be great if we could stop fulfilling these prophecies, you know, and all these things that we know. Can we just like stop fulfilling them? Like, can we please collectively, because when we collectively think things, we manifest it. That's why I feel like if we got the whole world or most of the people all at the same time, no matter what time it was, and everybody like sat there with the intention of like healing and love, we could heal the planet. We could do it if we got everybody to do it. But you have to convince people that's worthy of their time and effort, and they have to believe it. But I believe it. But
and that's if you didn't have a countervailing force on the other side that is going to completely go against and try to destroy that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll tell you another story.
Oh, we could. It's possible. Like, and we have to remember that we manifest these things. So, like, what we put our energy towards, we are manifesting that, and we have to remember that our thoughts and what we say and what we project and where we put our energy, we're manifesting that.
Yeah, you have to be a bit careful when you've got that countervailing force.
Like, so like, let's make sure we're not fulfilling prophecies that we don't want to be fulfilled, right?
Well, you're going to have to be a bit sort of sneaky about it, I suppose. There was a community north of here, a little valley that a bunch of hippies moved into, and it was good for farming. And after a while, they found they were self-sufficient for most things. They didn't have to use money a lot.
That's what I want to do.
They'd get a job out of town to get a bit of money if they needed something. And then they got the attention of the federal government, who said, here's your tax bill. We've just assessed all of the produce that you've been making for yourself over the last 5 years. And here's, like $5-6 million tax.
Yeah.
You've got to pay it.
Problem.
That's tax. And so what they did is they took their harvest that year and they dumped it on the front steps of Parliament House in Canberra, and it basically they just had to disband and declare. Like even bankruptcy doesn't protect you from taxes, so they each had to pay their $20,000-$30,000.
Crazy though. It's like we should not be charged to live on the earth. It's our only option. We are not given a choice. Like, do you want to be on planet A or planet B? No, we're born here. We should be able to live here and not, if we want to be off of the grid, then we should be able to be off the grid. Like, we need to stop letting these people control us.
Yeah, but but you got to remember this. You got to keep this one thing in mind. And I like what Baba said there. It's perfectly correct. I mean, handed all this technology and all this opportunity, but we have no idea what we're dealing with. And we also have no idea who we're dealing with and the power. We got to remember that, like when you talk about Machiavelli and you talk about Sun Tzu, Art of the War, and you talk about, I'm trying to remember what's the name, I'm forgetting right now, but understanding how to Sigmund Freud, understanding how the mind works and what tendencies most of us will fall into. We're dealing with somebody who, imagine you have, say, a hammer and a screwdriver to build something, and they literally have a whole DeWalt kit rolling thing with pneumatic drills and all that.
They got all the fancy stuff.
That's what we're fighting. And they're okay. Oh, perfect example, like NASCAR. You're dealing with a 1950s pit crew versus a 2023 NASCAR pit crew. you're fighting a massively uphill battle, and we all are. And then when you factor in that they use divide and conquer, sorry about the alarm going off out there, but when you're dealing with massive divide and conquer that these people have worked on and figured out to a science for not centuries, millennia, and this information has been passed down by people who sit at the top, millennia after millennia after millennia, we're starting so far behind.
We are, yeah.
So, I mean, just understanding how things work to begin with helps, and you know, catching up with what we missed before we were born.
Well, that's what I try to tell people. The biggest weapon we have is to have the conversations and get people to realize and understand what the problem is first. You can't solve your cancer that you have if you don't know what kind of cancer. If you're still going, well, maybe I'm having headaches, so let me just take some more Advil and go to sleep, you're not solving that cancer that you don't realize you have. You had to first understand that there is a cancer there, and then start going through the proper regimens and treatments for it. But we're dealing with a whole world that doesn't understand they have a cancer.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's why I try to find basics and share knowledge of those basics with people. So at least they've got the foundations of what are the actual stepping stones, the basics to work with, to know how to work towards a solution. I mean, I don't have any, you know, like this world or this civilization we live in my opinion, is so fucked up. There's just an enormous long way to get things
on purpose.
And well, I'm not going to fix it, but I'm going to try and do what I can to help those little bits that do fix it. If you know, you got to do something, otherwise I'd be in total despair, wouldn't I? But you know, sometimes I am. You know, when I see some of the idiocy and an outright psychopathy going on around the place, and I'm sort of going, well, you know, Jesus said this thing, sufficient unto the day the evil therein. And there's another thing I'd add to that, sufficient unto the horizon the evil therein. If you want to do something about the evil, well, as far as you can see is as far as you can do. Well, that's the best place to start, at least. So, you know, if you want the world to be a better place, start with your own neighbourhood. And it might work from there. Because people don't learn by being told shit. So me flapping my jaw here is not going to make a whole lot of difference.
I disagree. Because you never know who.
You never do.
Give you a perfect example. How many different people were inspired by somebody and went out and did something because of what they heard them say?
Yeah.
How many different? Look, I give you a perfect example. Nation of Islam in general, whether you agree with what they were about or anything like that, I can tell you, in the city I grew up in, one of the worst neighborhoods, literally the worst neighborhoods, they were able to go in and clean that neighborhood up. They were able to do something that the city couldn't do, the government couldn't do. And a lot of those people heard words that they agreed with from a Malcolm X or an Elijah Muhammad, or even in this case now, a Farrakhan or a Khalid Muhammad, and they were able to build things. So what you say can be impactful. I mean, Martin Luther King, a lot of the way he decided to protest, he got that from studies off of Buddha, Gandhi, and Mother Teresa.
Oh, the Black
and a couple other I'm forgetting too.
Yeah, that's a good point. But people do, well, on the broader scale, I tend to think that people like to see an example and say, hey, that works. How do they do that? And then they come and say, how do you do that?
I think that people are also more likely to join something than start something. So if we have a coalition, we have a movement going, we have like, you know, like there's organizations like in my community, like I know I've worked with deacons, I've worked with this other group that is like an anti-bullying coalition. I've worked with like, you know, my local soup kitchen. I've done like all this, you know, like this different community work. And all these different people, and it's amazing. Like COVID kind of like knocked that, like, stopped it in its tracks. But like I've done so much work like in my community, and I love it. I love being face to face with the people. I love interacting with the people. You feel better about it. But I think that most people are more likely to join something than to start something themselves. They don't know, like it's overwhelming, and you don't know, and you want to start something. So I always suggest to people, like, just look for different at least, look for different organizations in your community. Talk to, even if you aren't of a faith, at a church, it doesn't mean that you can't talk to somebody that is from that church. They might know, they're more likely to know like the different places, or if there's a human resources in your area. Find out the different organizations, and if you can help them, that's a great place to start. Like, I volunteered at my local soup kitchen, not because it was community service. I didn't have to be there. I chose to be there because, I felt like I've always felt like if you want a better community, be in your community, like do something. If there's garbage, then go walk. And I go and I literally clean up the local river out with garbage. And I find old pieces of glass and stuff, and I turn it into jewelry. Like, I started doing that because I was cleaning up garbage and found cool stuff in this spot. I'm like, wow, that's a really cool benefit to cleaning the river. Like, I've pulled boots and tires and all kinds of weird stuff out, and it's good for me too. Just getting a garbage bag and a grabber stick, and just being able to, go through your neighborhood and pick it up and just clean up garbage. It makes a difference. It makes you feel better, and other people will see that, and they're more likely to join that. Oh, you like to walk, like you take a walk and you do that. Let's do that together. You can get people that way too.
Well, yeah, I agree. I believe most people in general are actually by nature followers, and so that's the reason why I lean more towards it's not necessarily so wrong to have a chief or some kind of a leader, somebody who might step out and be the head of the pack, because most people would prefer to follow. And that doesn't mean that their input is not valued and it can't be used. It doesn't mean to treat them as if they're nothing because they didn't lead it. But I don't think it's anything wrong with taking the lead in general, because believe it or not, there are not a lot of people, like Lucky was saying, a lot of people are not leaders. We think that maybe everybody is, because we run into a lot of people, especially in the circles that we're in, who are trying to lead something. But most people would prefer, I know a lot of people who prefer the military, who prefer being in jail because they don't have to think. They just follow instructions. And we live in a world full of a lot of people who are with that. One thing I wanted to say real quick, when I was talking about how far, because I got to paint this picture all the way out so people will grasp where I'm coming from. You go back to the man Albert Pike. I'm not sure if people are familiar with him or not. He wrote a little-known book called Morals and Dogma. In that book, he literally predicted World War I, World War II, World War III, and not only predicted them, he predicted who would be on what sides in those wars, and he died in the 1870s or 1880s possibly.
It's freaking crazy.
So how did this man know this? Because this is an agenda that is being played out. And I'm forgetting his name right now. He goes a little off board and he starts talking about lizard people and stuff. But crap, can't remember what his name is right now. Somebody in the chat will know who I'm talking about. But he was trying to explain this, that we are on a trajectory. And the reason why we're on this trajectory is because this is a plan that people at the top levels have been working towards. And so can we individually do some things in our own areas and try to take care of our own neck of the woods and try to do the best we can? Yes, David Icke. But David Icke was already talking about a lot of these things. Many things that we're seeing that were happening in 2020 or 2022. He was talking about them in 2010, 2012. And it's only because he was looking at the patterns that he was seeing. And so when I'm telling people stuff, well, like some of the people who follow my channel who are watching, they know certain things that I was talking about 2 years ago that they're seeing now.
Yeah.
And stuff that I'm talking about now, you will start seeing. Yeah,
the awareness is growing.
Well, that's right. I forgot. Ozzy, that's right. You follow my channel. You know some of the stuff that I've been saying years back.
Was it Albert
Pike?
Pike.
Yes, he was. He was at that time the head of the what was it? The Scottish Rite and York Rites Freemasons out of New York.
Right. So, I thought I knew the name and the Masons and all that.
In which you'll find most of these presidents are all tied into the Masonic organizations through one way or another.
I'll follow that up. I just wrote it down. Say, look, there's something I've got to go and research because I'm not real familiar with it.
All the way back to George Washington. Washington, you see that he was a Mason, and you start looking through some of these older pictures of politicians, and they're doing the hidden hand. The hidden hand is a Masonic 33 level thing, which they're doing, indicating to each other. And so when people think, oh, well, politics are getting corrupt. No, they're not getting corrupt. They've always been corrupt.
Yeah.
I mean,
then of course, the Masons are an artificial tribe.
Yes. Well, one of the worst. Well, I gotta clean that up first. I want to say this because there are plenty of Masons who go into this and they're part of it and they are doing good stuff and they don't have a clue what's going on at the top levels. It's kind of like when I went into the military. I wanted to go in because especially we had a lot of ethnic Albanians, Kosovo refugees that went to my high school. I thought about how I could be helping them and how I would rather be on the front lines and, risk myself so that others wouldn't have to be on those forefronts. And then I realized some of the stuff that our government and military was actually really doing, even though what I might have been doing might not have been, necessarily bad or negative or many people. So there's a lot of compartmentalization that goes on in many of these organizations that everybody doesn't understand how wicked or evil the institution that they're a part of is actually, doing or how bad they really are.
Yeah, when you're a small piece in a big puzzle, you don't realize when you put all those together, that equals that. It's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
you might be working on the Death Star.
A lot of vets have told me that when I've talked to them, they've said that they were so compartmentalized that they didn't realize until afterwards what they were a part of. Even vets that were part of like Desert Storm. I talked to a few of them and they were like, yeah, if I found out in like documentaries and things what I was part of. Like I found out that way, not from my government, but like that way. Like it's really messed up. It really.
Yeah, I've been boots on the ground and watched CEOs looking at parts of certain countries, talking about how they were going to chop it up, basically like, oh yeah, we'll get the poppy seeds from there, and we'll get the cobalt here, and we'll get this, and it's surreal watching it right in front of you.
It's like they're grocery shopping. Like it's like, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to order this on the menu. And that's, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And when I try to tell people and explain some of these things to people about how this stuff really goes on, I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I'm not going to say I'm the only person in independent media who's like this, but as far as I know of, I'm one of the only ones that's a prior vet who's specificity and job field was dealing with weapons and missiles, things like that, literally working for a NATO mag. So understanding what weapons that we have, what weapons that we use, what's the capacities, which countries can do X and Y in some of these things. I don't know to the level that some people do.
Me that you're not on, more shows talking about these things because you have this experience.
Yeah, I mean,
it's really bothersome. It really, really is, and people.
How many people do you know that have dealt with Tomahawk cruise missiles?
I haven't.
You know
I mean,
what?
I grew
What
up as
about
a
some more?
military brat, but like, you know, so I understand certain parts of the, you know what I mean, of the life and being, you know, moving every couple of years and like just the whole thing.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know the hands-on.
I was a torpedo man, a Mark 46 tech, and I also went to school for 50 cal 76 millimeter and 25 millimeter weapon. Not only to mention dealing with harpoons, rams, white phosphorus, blue phosphorus, projectiles. I mean, you can go down the list, all the different stuff, bunker busters, and start going even to underwater mines, land mines, all kind of different stuff.
Mm. Yeah, the weapons makers are doing pretty good at the moment.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can tell you, for instance, certain weapons which we literally would rent. Get this used to blow my mind at the time, and this is this is in 2001. We were spending $13 million a month renting a certain weapon that if you buy it for one use, it's $40 million. And we were 13 million every month for whole entire mags full. Can you imagine how much fraud, waste, and abuse is going on through how much weapon sales and how we do things? Also, when they start talking about these tanks and weapon systems that you give to other militaries, you know which one has, you know which ships break down as soon as they get out to sea and have engine problems. So when they sell these ships, they strip them down, all the weapons and all that, and they sell it to a different country. We know which ones already had all these engine problems, that had a leaky hull, all this stuff like that. And the same thing with tanks, with amphib vehicles, with F-16s, F-18s, the whole list.
You know what's crazy? So where we live in the United States and in like this area, we have the military base, right? We have a big sub base. We have the Coast Guard Academy. So we have like all this, you know, and then we have electric boat, you know, and stuff like that. So, and then we have, you know, from outside of there, like Raytheon's not very far from us. They're, you know, like they're in Massachusetts, Boston and stuff like that. I mean, we have like all this, right? And so like people will like go in, they'll be like, yeah, my kid got, you know, a good job around here is a government like contracted, like, oh, I work at Electric Boat. And, you know, like I had a friend of mine tell me, oh yeah, my daughter went to trade school and now she works at Electric Boat. And I'm like, she works for the military industrial complex.
Well,
like,
I mean, it gets hard.
It was just hard for me to like go.
Well, I mean,
congratulations.
And I mean, and I'll declare, like, even my company, which I work for, it's a pump and boiler company, but every business you can think of under the sun needs pumps and boilers to keep their hot water and things like that going. And so all of these different hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, our company does businesses with Raytheon, Boeing. I mean, literally every weapons manufacturer you could think of. But what am I going to do? Be homeless? So it gets you in one of those situations where it's like, crap, what do you do? And a lot of these, the way it's set up, the way the military industrial complex is set up, especially in the U.S., is some of these cities, all you have for jobs that make a good amount are working for these large major corporations or sometimes weapons manufacturers. Some districts, that's literally all they have is you know, a Raytheon
It depends on
plant,
your field and stuff.
or
yeah.
Lockheed Martin plant, and you know, it's just
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do
sucks,
it.
But it's just how it is.
I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't morally. I would not be able to do it. I wouldn't. I would have to like move or get a different. Like I just wouldn't be able to do it. Like it's a line I couldn't cross.
And I mean, I can commend you. For some people, they might be able to be like, you know what, I can find another way. I can't do this. But
yeah, there's always a different job that's not like that.
Like it's like, okay, so what do I do? And like, I live in LA. It's a place where it's extremely expensive to live. And it's one of those cities, the moment you take your foot off the gas, you will be homeless. Period. So you're put between a rock and a hard place a lot of times. And a lot of people, that's why I have relaxed from being so hardcore at each individual person, because I realize how this system puts people in a situation. We're all stuck on the Death Star, basically.
Yeah. You mentioned, and I didn't know this, that in the military you were renting weapons.
Oh, yeah. We literally rent weapons from like Lockheed and General Dynamics. I mean, not General Dynamics, but what's the other one?
And you know what I immediately thought of?
Raytheon.
You will own nothing.
Definitely.
And you will pretend to be happy or else.
In fact, not only are we renting these weapons, we have whole mags full of weapons which we don't even touch. That like we literally will go, okay, we're doing a detachment and we're going over to this base and we're going to go over there and we're going to reorganize this and move this around and move that around. Maybe we put some on the ship and send it over here just to make room for some of these new weapons that are going to come in.
I know somebody that did that in Iraq.
Yeah, it's never ending, and
that was their job.
That links me to what Michael Hudson says about our economy becoming like 100% a rentier's economy.
Oh, yeah,
and this is the you will own nothing thing. And what we're seeing over the last few years is the 0.1% sucking up every asset they can get their hands on, and everything. So everything that people need or want, you will not own anything. You will have to pay rent to live.
Did you know in some states it's illegal to collect rainwater?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's restrictions here as well.
It's illegal to feed the homeless in certain cities.
Yeah,
like when I live in Jacksonville, that's illegal.
What? Yeah.
Yeah, people go to jail for that.
They couldn't believe that. I said, there's places in the US where it's illegal to feed the homeless, and they're going, no, you're lying.
No, I can show you reports where somebody decided they're going to set up on a corner and just give out food to homeless people, and they've gotten arrested for it.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I
Food Not Bombs has been arrested a bunch.
Yeah. Brilliant work. Love that guy. What's his name?
Keith McHenry.
Yeah. He's an amazing human.
Yeah, really he's been arrested a bunch of times.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm amazed that there's such good people around the place.
Well, I believe that even if you would have looked on the Death Star in Star Wars, there was good people all over the Death Star. But it didn't stop the Death Star from doing what the Death Star was doing. That's the reason why they keep people ignorant of what they're doing. They tell you, like, and they used to, like Marines, they would get them, some of them are literally guarding a trash can that has no relevance. But it's getting you in the mindset of to never ask the questions. So that when you are actually guarding something which is horrible, you are not going to ever question what you're doing. And so all you know is I guarded this area. It's kind of like the same thing where, young drug runners back in the day, you're moving a pack. You have no clue what the hell is in this bag. All you know is you're getting money to take this to this location and drop it off.
Yep.
You could be taking books or you could be taking heroin. You have no clue what's in there.
Yeah. Compartmentalization, they call it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, I've seen the executives, some people, they were on the other side and all they're doing is they're trying to liberate somebody from, say some terrorist unit that's been going in and rounding up the young ladies. These people, from their vantage point, they're helping an oppressed group of people. But you don't see that this group over here, which back when they were Blackwater, which I'm not sure whether the Academy or I don't know what they call themselves now, but Blackwater, they've drawn down on actual active duty military. I know about that directly. They killed active duty military. So, I mean, it's a lot of level of compartmentalization, and
can you help him get in
you don't realize the depths of it. And I think now with the internet age, you're able to learn more and more about it. But when I went in the late 90s, you didn't know any of that stuff. You had no clue. And another thing is, still to this day, the military, most of the people that they recruit to bring in are high school kids.
Lady Alex asked,
what compelled me to join the military? Didn't you know what you're getting? No, I had no clue what I was getting myself into. I had an uncle who was a major in the Air Force. Had no clue exactly what he did. All I knew is that they looked at, military people as heroes. I was under the impression that when we were going into Desert Storm, we were actually helping the Iraqi people. I mean, that's what I was taught. Also, I went from Boy Scouts all these years, and then junior ROTC, Air Force Junior ROTC, for 4 years. I had some injuries, so I decided to not try to take my sports into the college level. And then they start throwing this money at you for college. My family didn't have money to send me to college. I knew the only way I could go to college is college money. And the military goes to these schools and they throw money at young kids who don't know very much about the politics of everything that's going on. And then, like I said, my city, Kansas City, was a sister city to Sarajevo. We had so many refugee kids coming to our school that were roughly our age. And so I believe by going to the military, because many of them are saying, the U.S. military is coming to their aid and saving them from Milosevic. And so there was an angle of it where you feel like you are doing the right thing. You are helping somebody, but you don't realize for that 1 or 2 or 3 good acts that the military is doing, there's another 15, 20 bad acts that they're doing at the same damn time. You don't learn that stuff until you actually get in a lot of times.
And then you read Parenti about how all of that stuff kicked off in the first place.
Yes, I did. I accepted the white ruling class idea of what success is. I grew up in a Democratic family. I remember making signs literally for Michael Dukakis. I mean, we were blue Democrats, and I'll tell you this. I mean, I hope this is not taken as a slight against the Black community in particular, but a lot of the Black community back then and even till now trust the Democratic Party. They do not believe that they're being lied to.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing I'm not saying every church is intentionally lying to members or not, but if you trust a message from somebody, it's easily to be manipulated.
Yeah, no, that's legendary in the churches, the corruption that goes through churches.
We have a giveaway that we need to do. So I want to take a quick break and do our giveaway.
Yeah, giveaway time.
Because we've been doing this for a little while. I'm going to pull it up. Let me see. Will it show up? So these right here are 2 paintings that Lady Alex's mom did. And so she has donated them to our, to a giveaway for us to help us raise some money. And so everybody who's helped donate to us in the last few months, we really appreciate it. And we appreciate Alex, like she's going to send them out to the people that win. So I wrote down everybody's names and everything in on paper, and I put them all the same. I know that I probably could have done an electronic drawing, but I felt like the paper was just
paper is paper. All right, so Lucky's gonna draw the one for the lady.
The lady one first.
The lady one.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Show them the.
Show them all the things. There's the things right there. Okay, grab one.
Okay.
Grab one. Just one.
Okay, I'm trying to grab one.
Okay. What do we got?
Drew!
You bastard, you're so lucky. You did it.
Wow!
All right, now you got to do the thing, so I'll grab the thing.
Okay, let me shake them.
Shake them up.
Move them around.
Shake them up. Toss them about. Okay. Let me see in the bucket.
Yeah, they can see.
All right. I don't want to take more than one.
I'll say, did you steal my bowl, Lucky? I got a bowl like that.
Apple Jack.
Applejack.
Marcus
Kidding,
Marcus number 1.
So he gets
Hey, he's Marcus number 2. I'm Marcus number 1.
Oh man.
That could be. Them's fighting words, man.
So put Drew gets the female one and Applejack gets the male one.
Okay. And are we doing a drawing for anything
Hey,
else?
cool.
We got all these names.
I know.
Might as well do something.
What else are we gonna do a drawing for?
I don't know.
We could do it for our Lucky Burrito shop. We could give them a gift certificate or something.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Okay. So what? Like a $40 thing?
$40. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's kind of.
A $40 gift certificate. So somebody that has helped us and donated to us, if you guys are on the list of people, like most of the people in here, like have already. So like, let's see who we get.
Lucky's gonna pick the name. Do the same.
$40 gift certificate to our online store. Okay, here. This is it. Who is it?
John Kemper.
John Kemper.
John.
Awesome. Yay! I'll text him and let him know that he won. I don't know if he's in here right now, but I'll let him know.
Thank you,
Fam
everyone,
always wins.
for playing along.
Yay!
We appreciate you. Thank you, Lady Alex.
Yeah,
100
good
million
on you.
times.
Drizzle said, "Heck yeah, the gods won."
And yes, Steve, I will get round to sending that bunch of whistles to you. I just got to get round to it. And
Heck
you can
yeah.
raffle over.
Vicky was saying, "Don't feel it. Don't feel them around in there, Stever."
I was gonna ask Lucky. You hopped in a little bit earlier with me and Nico. What'd you think of our chat?
Oh, I found it interesting. I didn't stay very long. I had to go back and finish watching, but that was awesome that you had Nico on.
Yeah, I love Nico.
Seen
It's
him around
always
in a
so
while.
fun. Well, I mean, I if anybody can drag him out of retirement, I can.
Nice.
I like Nico.
Yeah, definitely. I had to go back and check it out. We were dealing with plumbing issues all day. Like
Yeah, I saw that.
Our entire apartment, like all of the main pipe for it was like was clogged, and I guess like the maintenance guys were up like all night, like because they were all like there was one guy on call, but they had to call in other guys because it was that bad. And like I guess there was elderly people that had frozen pipes and like all this other stuff. Oh my gosh, crazy. Yeah. But yeah, so my day has been kind of like a little like absolutely like nuts. Did you write it down, Steve?
I wrote it down. Drew got the lady geisha, and Applejack got the samurai guy, and John Kemper got a $40 card.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
So, Lucky, I wanted to, because you were talking about this, about soup kitchens and like community services and stuff like that. What would you call these? Are these institutions or?
Wow, your chat is great. They put it in there. Cool. Thank you.
Oh, the link for it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Vegan's great.
Vegan is awesome.
Yeah. Everyone should go check that out. Yeah,
check out their channel in general.
Yeah, everybody should go and check it out and subscribe.
I do. That's where I like to do my interviews at.
That's awesome. Baba is asking if the Nico chat is on your Rockfin.
Yes, it is on Rockfin.
Awesome.
Which you might, depending on how it goes, anytime I talk to Nico, YouTube doesn't like it. So you might have to go to my Rockfin anyway, because who knows, it'll probably look by tomorrow, they'll probably yank it down.
Yeah, there you go. So you asked me about the different organizations and stuff that I've worked with.
But what organization? What's the actual name for them?
One of them is a soup kitchen. It's
welfare.
Would you call them social because it's kind of like an institution, but it's
well, the soup kitchen is sponsored by a church, a local church, like a St. Vincent. It's like St. Vincent de Paul, but there's a director there who does community work. She's I call her like an angel because she just really she knows the pulse of the community. She knows the community. Like the local police, actually, our local police go and volunteer at the soup kitchen. They go and serve the patrons of the soup kitchen their Thanksgiving dinners and stuff. The local police do. Like we have a different and like if they have an issue with somebody, they will go to Jill and they will say, hey, so and so, blah blah blah, and then they use her as a resource. So it actually works in our local community that we don't have so much of the same things that happen. It's just what I mean. So like they use her as a resource. They say, okay, we need to talk to such and so about blah blah blah. They didn't show up for parole, or they didn't this, or what I mean. And then she'll go and she'll be that buffer between the two. And so it builds a relationship and a trust that's not in in the community. Other places are organizations that some of them, I think one of them is technically it's in a different church, but it's not like run by the church. They just use the space from the church and they get to use the tax ID of that church. They kind of like sponsor them, but they don't really like make that, what I mean? Like it's just kind of like you can use our tax-free stuff and things like that. Will help you with that, and you're doing good stuff in the community. And it's just literally a couple of ladies that do it.
No, I've been involved in similar things, but the reason why I ask is because I'm looking for some kind of conceptual categorization. So I'm just going to invent one. I'm going to call them social utilities. Yeah, because I need to have names for things so that I can organize them in my worldview and actually see how things relate to each other. Where I'm going to fit it into my worldview is that there's two kinds of capital, two main kinds. Some say there's more kinds, but the two main kinds are financial capital, which is all your money and that sort of thing, assets and that sort. And then there's social capital, which is your these social utilities that you're talking about, like the work, not exactly of the Salvation Army, but the function that they're providing for a community is it's not a financial capital thing. It's a social capital thing. And this is something where world economy doesn't recognize social capital, only insofar as it can be plundered. So all of your social utilities get converted into financial capital, and I reckon at about 10 cents in the dollar. And it's one of the big bad parts of capitalism that I don't like. It doesn't recognize social capital. Anyway, I was just looking for a word for it because I'll think about that and sort of develop it into something that I can relate to and communicate. So thanks for that, because it was just an opportunity for me to learn. So thanks for bearing with me.
I think that's a good, it's a good for us to have a label for that, because it is something that it is so needed in your community. It's so needed.
Social utilities, they form part of the commons that are actually generated by community. And the minute we stop generating social capital, it's just the end, man, because that's where it all comes from for community. Without that's like so foundational to my way of seeing things. So thanks for that, Lucky. I really learned from that. That's good. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and I've worked with like deacons that are from certain other churches, and like and so I've worked with just across the board. Like I have a bigger resume of like volunteer work. I'd rather, I feel more than actual like regular work. But I think it's really important, like, to be a part of your community in whatever way you can. I mean, like, there's ebbs and flows of life, and don't, you know what I mean? Don't harm yourself and to do it. But if you can, I mean, it can be something as simple as, like I said earlier, just collecting garbage in your neighborhood, just going out and, getting people like, hey, I feel like we should, like, let's get healthy and start taking walks around our neighborhood, or let's go down to, like the dog park and walk the dog park together, or whatever it is. There's ways to be involved, to pull, even just a small couple people. That's how it starts,
And that kind of value, it comes round back to you. The way that if you spend $1, that dollar may never come back, but you work within the community, the value that you bring in, and that comes back around to you. So very much support that.
Yeah, like when Skyla was little and she was in, like, I think it was 3rd grade. I went into her classroom every single Friday and I gave the teacher like an hour break, like where she was still in the classroom. She was just doing her stuff, but I went in there as the, just the parent of a child, and I would figure out some kind of craft or something that I could do with the kids that related to like their curriculum. And it just kind of gave her a break to kind of catch up, where she didn't have to have her eyes on the class, because they were all like, whoa, what are they gonna make, like, and it was always something really fun. And it was like, if they made that, if more parents were involved in that way, if they were able to be, you know what I mean? Because not every parent is able to, but I was able to do that and make that commitment. And I did that. And I'm so grateful that I did. I did a after school program that was it was like a theater type thing. And it was kind of like an association with the anti-bullying group that does local stuff, and they work a lot with the soup kitchen. So like a lot of the different places, like once you get in one, it's like you can kind of like branch off and see where, you know what I mean? There's a group of people that they go around and they clean up garbage. Like it's actually a local like mental health type place, and that's one of the things that they do, is that like they actually weigh the garbage. They find out how much it is. They get people like water and snacks, and like, like they go around with big trucks. They select a certain neighborhood or an area that has like stuff like, they'll be pulling appliances off the sidewalks and stuff like that, and they'll just go in and like, as a community, go in and clean up that area. And it's amazing, because nobody's required to do it. Nobody's making you do it. It's not a job, and it gives you so much satisfaction to do that.
That's great.
If I can, I want to kind of respond to what Vegan said here. Says, I'm not a religious person, but have volunteered through churches in the community. I wish we could support community actions for those in need without churches, but they have the dollars and infrastructure. There is a way which you can do it. If you go and talk to your community, most towns, and I'm not sure if yours has it or not. I don't know how big or small your town is, but in a town where there is some kind of community center or rec center, I'm pretty sure that you can get in touch with somebody in there, and they would allow you to be able to at least set up some kind of meeting places, or section off a corner, or maybe just on their property be able to set up some kind of food drive. I do know of somebody out here in the California area where she literally makes plates of food, and so people will send her a little bit of cash, and she will get together and take food out to the homeless. And so there's ways of doing it, even if you just use like a local rec center as a meeting place to be able to set up. You'll pick a day where you guys all go out and pick up garbage, or whatever you have planned to do, or maybe help with the elderly neighbors, some chores they need around the house, trimming the hedges, cutting the lawn. And so I say that what can be done for people who would like to seek a way outside of the church, I would say try to go back and to the community centers and try to, bring it back to that. And that way you can reinvigorate these community systems and use them in a way to help the community, kind of the same way that the Black church used to use politics. They would, talk. That's the reason why the Black church would be really big on the civil rights stuff, because that was the only place they could have it without, the Klan necessarily coming to a house until they start coming to the churches and burning those down. But, that's just some advice.
So do you think that's why people, is that why people then support, like you said, like before, that Black people tended to support like the Democratic Party and things that they're like, is that why? Is it because it's instilled in that same way?
Well, that's part of it. I would say it's because when you had that big switch right around the civil rights era, you had a lot of the Dixiecrats that were Democrats who switched over to a Republican Party, and you had a lot of Republicans who did care about the issues, some of them switching to the Democratic Party. In that time period where it was in flux, you had a lot more Democrats in that 60s period that did care more and were more aligned with the civil rights movement. But that was very short-lived. And what happened is, because they built a certain level of trust, it still gets looked at that way. And so, they don't notice how things have changed. It's the same way where I remember we would always watch like the nightly news with ABC, and we would watch a lot of these major like world news stations, CBS, whatever, and we would watch all those. Well, back then, I'm not saying that they weren't corrupted then, but at least it was a little bit more honest than it is now. And you could get some pushback. You could hear a little bit of both sides. Whereas I don't think a lot of those people who had that trust in those people and who weren't listening to anything but these outlets noticed when the switch started to happen, because they weren't hearing anything different. And so it got passed down that these are reliable sources.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of Black people stayed in the Democratic Party, and that's why the Democratic Party still goes out and panders and makes it look like they're trying to do some of the stuff, but never actually go through with it. Because they know, okay, the Republican Party, how they've become now, they're not going to do anything. That whole vein of people that were in the Republican Party they might have had a different view of how to help the communities. When you started having the people pushing for what was called social responsibility, really that was just a way to say that we don't want to help any of these people over here. We don't want to commit anything to them. And that's the reason why you had like cities like Detroit, which got like demolished. What happened is, when you had what they called white flight, and you had a lot of the areas where there would have been some white business owners and some banks and things like that, as a lot of those people moved out after the riots that were happening in the 60s, what happened is you didn't have banks on the corner. You didn't have certain things. You didn't have certain infrastructure within these communities. And then what that led to is more and more businesses to start fleeing from those areas. So as you had wealthier Black people, or people who were just middle-class Black people, which would be still in those communities that would set up business and shops, they left the communities also. And so what you had left over is a lot of people who were struggling to get by, who were left in these communities. And so that's when you start having some of these people who were on government assistance. Well, the Republican Party felt like, these people are just degenerates, and the best way to help them is just take all the resources away. Well, at the same time that they were doing that, you had crack being introduced into that same community. And then, so you take away the opportunity, NAFTA comes in, you ship away a lot of the factory jobs that was helping get these people out of poverty. Then you throw crack into the neighborhood also. And then you say, let's just bring in police to start being head busters. And so and then as new immigrant communities come in, They're able to get easy, quick business loans and all kinds of different money. A lot of people don't realize this, how many like why there's so many different, let's say Chinese restaurants and Arab gas stations and all of these people who are within these communities, because they're given money to come into these areas. Whereas those people, those Black people in those very communities, aren't allowed to even get money to put these same businesses in their own community. And so then you have the new immigrant class who are coming in and like, look at these Black people. They can't even do anything for themselves, not realizing that those loans they're getting for those businesses that they're starting, that the Black people are not being allowed to get any of those loans.
Yeah. The entire system was put in place, one piece after one piece after one piece, and then when you know what I mean, it's like if you don't look at the whole puzzle of that, you gotta see the whole puzzle. Compartmentalize, it's the same thing as how they compartmentalize the military. It's the same thing as when you look at the systemic issues that have been built up over time, and unless you look at all the pieces, you might not see it. You might not. If you're like, oh, well, it's only a couple pieces here and there, but if you don't have that complete puzzle, then you're not going to see it. And that's the thing. You don't see it all.
And Joe Biden, a Democrat who's supposed to be on their same side, was one of the people who pushed for a lot of these policies. And people will say like, well, Reagan was the president. Yeah, but look at which Democrats who were on the side of doing these things. There were some of these very same Democrats who people think are on their side were the ones who were siding with some of these conservative policies. And then what did you have after that? Then you had the rise of laws like stop and frisk, the crash units, Drano, all that, the jump out boys, stuff, i.e. what you see with the Scorpion unit all the way up to now with what happened in Memphis. All of that came from this type of policing. And then you factor in that a lot of the prisons are private prisons, and these same Democrats are making money off of the same prisons. And then you have the judges who are throwing out, what is it? I can't think of what is it, applied immunity, not applied immunity. I'm forgetting what it's called, but where they're keeping more and more people in jail. I mean, a lot of people don't know that 85% of the people who are in jail are in there for nonviolent offenses.
Yeah, and you know what they're doing now in Massachusetts? I don't know if I sent it to you. I covered this the other day on the show. I if I didn't send it to you, I can. I covered how in Massachusetts they have a bill in place that they're trying to get passed that you can donate your organs or your bone marrow and get a lesser prison sentence. And I said, who's impacted in prison the most? It's like non-violent Black and brown people at a more disproportionate rate. So
when we say brown, that's including Native Americans. A lot of people don't think about it that way. The highest per capita population in our prisons are Native Americans. A lot of people don't know that. It goes back and forth between Native Americans to Latinos to Black people, but those are the top. Even though those communities together only come up to roughly about maybe 30% of the population. Yeah, they occupy like 75% of the prisons.
Yeah. And so when you look at the math in that way, like, because people will be like, oh, well, it's only that many of them. But it's like, yeah, but there's so many less of the people of those population, of those ethnicities. So you have to look at it, at the whole piece of it. You can't just look at the little pieces. You have to look at the whole puzzle.
Well,
and I would throw in people need to.
I would throw in one more wrinkle that people don't factor in. How Hollywood, for instance, typecast in most of the movies when they started putting a lot of Black people in, especially movies in the 90s, you could only be basically, Black guy was always going to be a criminal. And so that plays on people when that's what you see in movies. And then
it's subliminal, you know what I mean? You're digesting that information like we were talking about earlier. You're like hooked on the screen and like when you're going from screen to screen, and you know what I mean? And if you're watching, especially if you're watching any kind of mainstream, like, you know, superhero stuff or anything like that, or you know, you're getting all kinds of subliminal shit.
Oh yeah, like, I mean,
You're getting fed it like nonstop.
Crazy. Did you see what was it, that interview, that Crazy Bone that was from Bone Thugs and Harmony, when he came out talking about that there was a meeting that they went to, a lot of rappers in the early 90s, to start pushing them into gangster rap. Yep. It was, all of this has been a step by step, you know, that a small group of people have been doing that. A small group of people in the government have been pushing an agenda towards a group of people, and it's clear and naked now. We can all see it, but this is where all of this generates all this stuff going way back, and a lot of, and that's the reason why you'll never get a lot of Black people to ever even think about the Republican Party, because they don't acknowledge any of this. They completely don't acknowledge that any of this stuff was going on. It's like, oh, why couldn't you guys just can't pick yourself up by your bootstraps? Oh, I noticed an interesting comment out there. Somebody says something about meth. That reminds me of something that was going on in KC. You had the cop units who were running all over KC, going through the treating every single Black and brown person like they were the problem with the meth epidemic. Because KC, for a time period, for a couple of years, became one of the worst places in the entire country for meth. Well, they kept going to the hood and finding nothing, going to the hood, finding nothing, going to the hood, finding nothing. Then eventually they start going to the trailer parks, finding nothing. Hood, trailer park, finding nothing. Well, the fire department told them after a while, hey, we're having all these fires out here in the suburban areas. What they were doing is, the first floor that you would walk in, it looks like a house. Then you go into the basement and they got a meth lab in the bottom. And so they spent all their time looking over here and policing over here in this area while ignoring all of this other crime that's going on, thus making the whole entire city get worse. And then you're focusing on the news only on this one section over here, which helps reinforce Republicans thinking that, oh, these are the criminals over here.
It's constantly like reinforced. It is.
And I appreciate you, Chris. Thank you. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah. Marcus is always welcome back. Absolutely.
I don't know. I always wonder sometimes if, you know, I might be going too far sometimes when starting to bring out all that information. Sometimes it might be like, okay, yeah, we've all heard it before. But then I realize everybody hasn't heard all this stuff, at least not put together.
No,
they might have heard a piece here
we're
and there.
Looking at it from we're looking at it from a whole entire picture, and also from the micro of it too. You know what I mean? We kind of try to keep that perspective, because that's how it's balanced. We know what I mean? We keep our perspective in that way, it's more balanced. We can better assess it and look at it from a whole picture.
Yes. Thus, somebody said it right there, military budget high. Thus, why you had a lot of Black and brown people going into the military for college money. It's all a cyclical thing that goes on and all affects everything.
Baba Yaga, I did a show of it. Steve made a clip of it too. So there's like a clip of me covering it. But yes, they are offering lesser sentences between 6 months and a year off of their time in Massachusetts to prisoners. That's what they want to do.
Hey, Fish, you got a nice looking kidney.
I know. Can you imagine? And if you're in there and you're like, oh wow, I can get a year off. You know what I mean? And it's like, you want to be with your family, you want to be out there. It's exploiting people, and you're exploiting the people. You know what I mean? That are poor. Because usually that's the poor people that end up in jail, and so I covered Rikers Island with Applejack, and we went into that and some of the history of that and how even awful the history of the name of Rikers Island and what it's built on. And so imagine if they pass that in Massachusetts. You think that New York, right next door, isn't going to be right there, and that the rest of it spreads like that.
Well, the Philadelphia experiments. I was talking about the Philadelphia experience not that long ago. I was on Sabby's. I know People have different, but anyway, let's focus on just the story. But anyway, the Philadelphia experiment, it had what was going on in the experimentation on the prisoners in there. The guy, he wrote a book called what was it? Acres Full of Flesh or something like that, where all he saw was just wide open territory to experiment on people. And a lot of the pharmaceuticals that have come out for skin conditions and all kind of other stuff was founded through his very sick experiments that he was doing. And so if they were doing it there in Philly, ding, 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 you better imagine they were doing it in Rikers.
Yep. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. Like and it's awful that people even think this way. You know, like how, like that. I've never been able to put my mind around that because I've never been someone to think that way. And so to me, I'm like, how do they even like? How are their minds so sinister?
Well, because look at this. Look at the world we're living in. Just look at it as a whole. If you're able to connect that somebody at the top is putting these politicians in place to do certain agendas, then all these other agendas are tied to the agendas that are coming out of their wicked, sick minds. All of this stuff is all connected, and it's all coming from these same people who are sitting at the top. When we're hearing about organ harvesting throughout the prisons, or whether I've heard stories about organs harvesting where they're finding literal male members that came out of Africa in China. This is all coming up. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. I don't know if you know about that one. But the stuff that's going on with the UN and NATO and all the sex trafficking that's going on and the raping of, children, literal children in villages and all this different stuff that's going on. This is all known about on very, very high levels and all being covered up on very high levels. And when they're telling you that this people over here are the enemy, a lot of times you look at the countries what the U.S. have been against. They're all the countries that did not want to go up under some kind of, what are they called? Federal Reserve. They didn't want to go under some kind of Federal Reserve system. Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, North Korea. Noticing the pattern here?
Yeah, they don't like the IMF loans.
Yeah, Libya. Yeah. These countries who want to stay out of that, they come at them.
Anybody who wanted to escape the US dollar as the reserve currency. That's why they got rid of Gaddafi.
Yep.
But then Libya is just a little place, and now Russia and China are doing it. Not a lot the United States can do about that.
Well, that's why they're trying so hard to weaken them.
Oh no, they want all the resources out of Russia, and they want all of the cheap labor. I don't know why they're mucking around with China. It's sort of
Baba hit me up, and I'll send that story to you. But it's wild. Yeah. Oh well, thank you. I mean, I try. I just know that sometimes it can be a lot.
This is where you can go and where you can push things. This is where we push the envelope. Because if we don't walk up to that line of offense and find out where it is, then where do we know where it is?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, I'm here to learn with everybody. You know what I mean? If we cover something wrong or we say something that's wrong, then we will, you know what I mean? We will correct that and we will set the, you know what I mean? We will evolve our opinions, you know? But if we don't walk up to that line of offense to find out where is it? Is it over there somewhere? You know what I mean? Then we don't ever know. So if we don't talk about the touchy things and we don't push the conversation to find out, okay, well, no, that makes me feel this way. And this is why, you know what I mean? Like we have to be able to have that give and take and have the different, the dialogue. If we don't, then it's just an echo chamber. And we need to find out where that line is and where's that line of offense? Where does it become offensive or where is it too far? And let's question it and let's talk about why, that's what we're here. That's what we like to do, at least,
That's the heart of being authentic.
Yeah, well, this should show fearlessly authentic.
yeah, because that's sort of like a moving feast being authentic. Authentic is of the moment, according to the truth of the moment. If you're not seeking the truth and seeking to follow where the truth leads you, you're not going to be authentic at all.
Yeah.
That's what I like about this crowd, because we're willing to take the risk to give our opinion and then to have it challenged and accept the challenge.
Yeah. And I love that. Like, that's what we should be having. We should be having discourse and like, like, okay, well, why do you feel that way? And let's explore that. You know what I mean? Like I think that's an amazing thing. It's really, there's so much, there's like an intimacy of it. You know what I mean? Like of really being able to push somebody and say, hey, like, I really don't agree with that. Like, let's talk about why. It's really it becomes a really interesting, engaging conversation because you want to find out, you know what I mean? Because it's really, it's not doing it in a bad faith way. It's doing it in a way because you want to understand and you want to resolve or you want to figure it out. You're like, okay, I got this puzzle and I need to figure this out. Like, let me see everything here.
Yeah, I tell people also, what I tell you guys also is only a fraction of the amount of research that I do. There's you can't pigeonhole me into any area because I've studied so much on so many different areas, and I've always just been an extremely curious person. So one thing I wanted to ask Oz, because I told Lucky this and she like basically laughed her head off. Somebody actually made a video that said that I'm scripted. Do you think it's scripted after being on here with me, Oz?
No, I understand. Like you said, it's just the tip of the iceberg that you can expose in what's it been, an hour or 2 hours, 26 minutes. How about that? But then if you were to unload everything, it would take years.
I've already said, like, somebody said you should run for office, which, believe it or not, for a couple of years ago, I thought about actually challenging Dianne Feinstein for California Senate. But
I wouldn't want you to go through that.
But
like,
I
really wouldn't. Like, I really,
I would die. That's what would happen. Yeah. Somebody would probably assassinate me.
I really wouldn't want you to go through. Like, I really like having you.
There's weapons manufacturers that need that loot, bro. Sorry.
Somebody would be like, no. He is saying way too much. That's the reason why even my Twitter is censored. I don't even hardly tweet anything and it's censored. Like, literally, one of my videos that I did was supposed to be a benign video about like my visit to KC, and I'm riding around with my mom and showing some of the sites. Do you know what they put my video under? Like, because they'll have like something that will suggest a video. The video that suggests mine, one is having to do with penis extensions, and the other one is worst neighborhoods in America.
Oh God!
What?
That's the algorithm search selection that they put my video under.
Wow!
What?
Dummy bastards!
Yeah, so I started looking into like, while I'll notice the video, it starts getting, and then all of a sudden, it'll stop. Yeah. And then I'll get one view and then another view. And I start realizing, when I look into the algorithm, what is suggesting my videos or how much is getting suggested or not suggested. It's, yeah. they literally, like, it'll say literally 0 notifications that get sent out sometimes.
See, that's the danger of dependency when you become dependent on these social media companies. Mm-hmm. These are a bunch of strangers, and you're the product, like you're not the customer.
Well, but they don't want me to divulge how the sausage is being made. That's the problem.
What is a penis extension?
Vicky has a question for you.
Oh, what was the question? I didn't see it.
Steve said there was a question. Right here. Here we go.
Yes, I guess apparently there was a video.
We're going into the dirty burrito after dark.
There's a video out there about, I guess, penis extensions and erections or something like that, and that's one of the videos that suggests my content. So
this looks like a great commercial.
So
right now, this is an ad. We have to make this an ad for Marcus. Everyone go subscribe, because who doesn't need a penis
this
extension?
Discussion just took a turn.
Recommendation.
Well, they definitely and think about it. If somebody who's looking for information on that, they're not going to care about that video. I mean, it's like completely not even close to the same subjects. Yeah. And then if you're looking for a nice trip to go to KC, like somebody who's looking at that videos that wants to see the worst hoods, they are not looking for a nice vacation travel and the cool places to go. They want to see the horrible stuff that you can see, the bad stuff. So once my video clicks on, they're like, yeah, skip. I don't want to see that. It's not put. It should be in the category with just anybody who is visiting KC or want to see KC or travel. It's not put under that though.
Did you put like the tags and stuff in it? Do you do the tags on your
I got
videos?
like 50 tags on that video.
Oh my gosh. It's so
and
ridiculous.
It has what, like, I think it has what, 37 views. But this is the first time when I noticed them do this, I did a healthcare video, and all it was just, it's very, very bad editing. It was when I was kind of first starting out, so warning to anybody who goes to see that. It was a clip from a bigger channel, and once it hit 11,000 views, it stopped. And after that, my content after that all started, getting cut. And a lot of the videos I had after that didn't go over like 30, 40 views for a good long time. And then later on, some start getting a little bit bigger. And then when I started the political matrix, then I started getting a little bit of steam, and then that same thing stopped. So no video, I think, has gotten over 500 views on there.
Now that's why I like small channels. It's anything that's too big is already sort of at the service of the powers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm never going to be at the service of the powers. Never. I have certain my views come from, and my dictation and direction I go come from my faith, and I'm more fearful of what my God will do to me than what man can do to me.
Yeah, I like getting into your channel because it's always good stuff, and it's always well thought out, and the arguments are always very strong.
Well, I literally spend, just a little behind the scenes, I literally spend all week long, basically most of the day, thinking about the subjects that I'm going to talk about that week. Yeah. And so I really do try to go through as many sources as I can, try to see who brought up a perspective that I didn't think about. And sometimes I have to listen through maybe 45 minutes to an hour of somebody saying stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I got that. You're missing this, but oh, wait a minute, that's a good point. Let me go research this. And so it is listening to it, because what made me actually take that course, believe it or not, thank you, Jesse Smollett. Thank you. Because I was one of those people that heard the story, reported it out as was, and then started commenting like everybody else. Oh, this is messed up how it happened. Not really slowing down to think about the fact that some things didn't make sense. Nobody is going out at that time of the night, like 2 a.m, to go get a Subway sandwich in Chicago in like 2 feet of snow. You're not doing that. And if you're a wealthy celebrity, of course, and then you're telling me that these MAGA people in the downtown Chicago ran up on you, get out of here, dude.
You got to have, you got to critically examine everything. And then once you start doing that, and then once you start using those critical thinking skills on like that scale, then you're like, yeah, it just it's a snowball effect, and then you can't unsee those things.
Yeah,
you can't unsee corruption, you can't unsee the patterns of things happening, and sometimes it sucks because if you call it out before everyone's ready for it, then it's an issue.
Yeah, well, I treat all mainstream and most of what's on social media the same. To say, if anyone's trying to make me emotional about something, I know that they're trying to hijack, they're lying to me, or they're trying to...
They're manipulating you in some way.
Yeah. So I've gone very guarded with that stuff now. I never used to be. But these days, I always know who's watching television is because whenever their mouth opens, prefabricated talking points fall out. They go, television person. Yeah, okay, I'm not going to try to speak. I'm just going to nod and go,
I ask a lot of questions. Like, if people aren't asking questions and they're not curious and they feel like they just have like a solid opinion, and then there's just no question, and like that's like, to me, is like, no, like, why? You must have closed your mind then, and I don't trust that like you have all of the pieces, because I feel like I always have more questions. Always, like, I have questions.
Well, and you should. The moment you stop questioning, the moment that your brain really stops functioning, the moment that you basically start dying.
Yep. I suppose I'll never die then.
Well, that's the goal. You need to be questioning. All of us need to be like a 5-year-old for the rest of our lives, always asking why. Because the one thing you need to understand is every single one of us has been lied to, and been lied to about massive things.
Yeah, things that have affected us in massive ways.
Yes. And you got to know that somebody has an agenda at the top. Somebody has an agenda, and stop anybody who's thinking that it's just a Bill Gates. It's higher than that. I'll tell you this.
Oh yeah, he's middle management.
Yes.
Like, he's not at the top.
He's middle management at best.
Focus on him, and I'm like, no, he's not the guy way up there. He's just not.
I will add this though, because I spent 16, 20 years in corporate, and went a fair way in it. A lot of it is from evil people. Yeah, it is. But some of it's systemic. The profit motive itself is massively corrupting. And I used to design business processes and systems for corporations, and I've got a whole template of what systems and processes you need for various kind of businesses. It was very detailed, and it's all at the service of the profit motive. And if you don't have a business case for your proposal, it's not going to get funded. And if it's not funded, it isn't going to happen. And for corporations, everything is the profit motive. And just above that, you've got these little empire builders who actually go into corporations, gain influence and status in the corporation, and build a little bunch of enforcers and stuff, and make an empire in there. And they're all looking for ways to legally, if not ethically, siphon money out of the corporation into their own little empire. And that's at the highest levels, and they're all doing it. And the rule is, if you catch each other, you hammer each other, and it's deadly. They do wicked shit to each other. And it's one of the reasons why I left, because I was trying to be an ethical manager, and they very quickly showed me that no good deed will go unpunished. Like if I had a preferential hiring policy for women or for minorities, man, I got hammered for that. If I wanted, like, I used to keep good relations with the people who are working on, in my projects and stuff, and in operations. So, for instance, you'd go down to the warehouse and ask the warehouse people about their issues, and you know, how things are going with them and what do you like. Oh, we like Chupa Chups, to the kind of lollipop, you know. The Kojak used to, you know, oh, Chupa Chups, okay. So whenever I went to the warehouse, I'd bring a big bag of Chupa Chups for them, and which I paid out of my own pocket. But when I tried to charge back to the company, no, you're not allowed to do that kind of thing, you know, because that's some special kind of taxation, which is, it costs us like 4 times as much to do the paperwork than to pay for the, you know, anything for the employees. And so they tried to stop me doing it. I kept doing it though, out of my own pocket. But that's how corporations work, and that's systemic evil, you know. And after a while, when I saw at the top echelons how cutthroat it was, I said, no, I'm out of here. So I left, never went back.
Yeah, I guess I got to get out of here, but I wanted to respond to that Rothschild one real quick. I got a video that I recommend everybody check out. What was it called? I like redid it. It's like they own crap. I can't remember what it's called now.
Everything.
Something like that. I'm gonna look up the exact name of it real quick.
Like along those lines.
Yeah, you should be able to.
I think it's like They Own the World or something like that.
Yes.
I don't know.
Drop it in the chat.
It sounds like Steve has saw it.
I believe I have, and I think that's the name of it. What you just said, like they own the world, or they own everything. Or
I got an interesting one about Truth Unedited exposes Rothschilds and Rockefellers. Trying to check that one out. But where is it? They rule the world revamped.
They rule the world. That's what it was. Yeah,
that's what it was. Check that one out. I mean, it's only like 38 minutes, and then I had an interesting stream. Like, this is from what? This was quite. That looks like it's so old, but red pill, blue pill. Oh, red pill, blue pill, clear pill, short. Oh, that's why it says 10 months ago, because there was me taking a clip from that live stream that was actually from like 2 years ago. But yeah, I would say check those out. You know, they're from roughly about 10 months ago. I mean, 10 months ago. On the the political matrix.
You should have just stuck. You should have just stuck with 10 minutes ago, and you could just convince them you have a time machine. And you are an anarchist. You know.
Can I just answer a little statement there? If society decided to kill the top 2% in the street in front of everyone tomorrow, how would the next ruling class behave? I can answer that, because when that happens to a baboon troop, it stops being patriarchal and starts being matriarchal. The hierarchy disappears.
What would happen is, honestly, you would have a completely different, because what people don't realize is that top 2% who runs like this, it's actually less than 2%.
We're not saying to be violent. We're not saying to be violent.
I'm not telling anybody to do anything. For one, you would have to find them. For one, you'd have to be able to find them, because these people don't operate just walking down the street. Yeah. These people also have layers and layers and layers of insulation and security. That's another thing. They've also spent some of them are literal trillionaires. Yeah. Do you know what kind of protection that buys you? That buys you literal militaries.
Yeah, insulation
to protect you. The level of insulation.
You probably couldn't effectively eliminate that top 2%.
Exactly.
I don't think you couldn't get close.
They've worked hard to make sure that can never happen. Society would tear down before that would happen. But if you were able to somehow, I think it would. If it just became a situation of the next man up, then it's not going to matter. But if it was an actual change, some kind of actual revolution, and you had whole new management of a whole new group of people, they're not within the club, so they don't think as the club do, so you would have a change. The same way which you had in like royalty or even the Caesars. You had one Caesar that literally was killing people on a whim, and literally took a man and chopped his whatever off after killing his wife and decided to make him his concubine. Yeah, it gets weird in some of this history.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he killed his own wife, then felt remorseful about it, then grabbed this boy, cut him off, castrated him, making him a eunuch, and then forced him to be his dead wife. But when you get away from some of these people being in charge,
yes,
the very next person who came after him didn't do any of that stuff and helped literally build up whole entire, areas. My neighbor is a Republican. Yeah, they're going to be lost in the sauce for a long time because they literally believe that they're doing the right thing. But I gotta get running.
Where can everybody find you? We're gonna wrap up. We've been going for
that's been great.
Wonderful. Thank you, fellas, for
going on close to 3 hours.
Thanks for the opportunity.
I definitely appreciate
share notes.
I mean, it's good to finally get to actually talk to you.
It's great.
I mean, we've been kind of having these little theological conversations back and forth through chat, and so it's good to actually be able to flesh it out, because I hate to go back and forth with them between chat. For one, you can't tell how a person's saying something, if they're being snarky, if they're being serious. Also, you're not. Also, it's just a pain in the ass doing all the fucking typing. So it's easier to just talk and have a free flowing conversation.
We'll have to do another one.
Yeah, but you guys can find me at The Political Matrix here on YouTube or on Rockfin. Which on the Rockfin you get The Political Matrix and you get the Thinking with Young Morpheus also included. So you get a 2-for-1 following the Rockfin channel. And occasionally stuff that gets yanked down from my Hebrew Apologetics channel, I will upload on there also. And then occasionally also I go back and I take old videos where I'm like, man, I was saying some good stuff here, but nobody really saw this video. I'll clip something out of it and throw it on there. So you guys can find me either if you're into some of the biblical discussions or you have questions, please come over to Hebrew Apologetics with Young Morpheus and Jose, or make sure to catch us every week. The Political Matrix, we're normally about 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. And then the Thinking with Young Morpheus, typically look for me on Sundays. The time will always vary depending on the guest. I'm working on bringing a guest on from the UK, an author, to talk about colorism, the story that she was going through. Very good book that she wrote called The Black Rose, that she was dealing with colorism in India. And then I have some other interviews that I have planned, but definitely check those out. And it doesn't only stay politics; it goes into whoever I can get on. Doesn't matter what the stop topic or subject, music, theological stuff, cultural issues, whatever. So definitely check that out. And then you guys can find me at Real Marcus J Cage or at Marcus James Cage. And if you find any of those, that will click to the other corresponding YouTube page, because I mean, Twitter pages. I have a Twitter page for every channel that I have, and then of course Instagram, whatever. You guys can find me. I'm pretty accessible. Just hit me up, hop in the DM, like my homie out there, Baba. She'll send me stuff, and I check out everybody's info, and if I can incorporate it into a story, or if it's something you guys want me to talk about, just let me know. Or questions on it, just let me know.
I send them stuff. I'm like, here, you might like this,
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if we both cover this thing, we'll have different perspectives on it. So, I think it's great. I think it's such a valued thing when you know what I mean? Another content creator's like, hey, yeah, like this is kind of like your kind of like alley, you know what I mean? Even if you do or don't use it, but you know what I mean? It's just kind of cool to get those little gems every once in a while.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it, and I always try to, if I got something and I think that, you know what, they might like this over here, this might be valuable, that's what independent media was supposed to kind of be. But as we kind of get in, you realize it doesn't really work that way. But that's a whole other conversation.
That is a whole other thing. We should definitely talk about that though, and have a conversation about that.
Oh, and thank you, Vicky. Thank you, everybody who just was here and part of the conversation. We do value you guys all. I mean, if you guys weren't here, then we would just kind of be talking to ourselves. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Chad, we're just wrapping up. He comes in last minute. You're going to have to rewind.
Yes, I appreciate you all. And make sure anything. Oh, thank you. You're too kind, Bella. Too kind.
And thanks, Marcus. That's great.
I appreciate it, Oz. Again, like I said, it was good to finally, match the face with the name and get the chit chat. I tell people I might do this again, but I'm going to have some time where I'm just going to put a link out there and just let, somebody decide to just hop on for a minute and join the show. So I don't know. Keep watching Wednesdays. I'll do that.
Yeah, I used to do it.
I do it when I don't already have, because people don't know all the time. I don't even get to all my topics. I just have so much I'm trying to cram. And I'm trying to stay roughly at 2. I don't really want to go over 2.5 hours because I know it's late for Chris. Yeah. And for those who don't know, my co-host, Cy Lawson, he's normally, so for him, it's starting at 9:30. So at 3 hours, it's midnight over there for him. So it's like,
I'm in the same
try not to push it too long. Yeah. So you get it. I try not to keep it too late for him. So. Again, thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
And thank you, Lucky and Steve.
Thanks, Oz.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks, Lucky.
And Oz, where can people find you besides in our chat here?
In the chat here is where I mostly am. That's where you're going.
And what about on Discord? Can they find you on Discord or anything if people want to reach out?
Yeah. I'm a member on your Discord. I think Lucky and Steve is, so they can find my name on there.
Awesome.
But I don't have my own Discord. You can, but I don't do Discord much at all. Mostly these chats either here on YouTube or Rumble.
That's usually how I catch you.
Well, we appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you.
And get
John
to the political matrix. It's good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Applejack 1.
Yeah, and I'm going to be having Applejack coming on for interview soon. So watch out for that.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Double Marcus.
I know.
Marcus to the second power.
What? Marcus Squared.
Marcus.
That's what you should name the show when he comes on. Marcus Squared.
I might.
Excellent.
Marcus Squared.
All right, boys. We'll see you next time.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Peace.
Right,
have a good night, everybody. Hit that like button.
Hit the like button.